Edits or changes recommended.
Under waiver request for the subdivision modification request for Green Tree, my name's spelled Brain instead of Brian. That's it. Grammatical.
Any opposition to that recommended edit? I don't imagine. He's a smart guy, that's what we call him, Brain. Any other commissioners, so that edit is accepted. Any other review items? So then if I could ask Commissioner Butts to amend his initial motion, if he would, to accept the edit made by Commissioner Beta. Is that motion made?
That's acceptable to me.
Is there a second on the amended motion?
I'll second it.
Commissioner O'Malley seconds the amended motion to accept that edit. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to the motion, nay. There are no nays. I abstained by reason that I was absent from the June meeting. Good, Deborah?
Where's the misspelling again, so Deborah can?
After waiver request for the subdivision modification request
Item
for
6.
Green Tree.
Item 6.
Oh, okay.
Because
Brain.
Yeah.
the word, so it doesn't come up as a,
Yeah, so we'll do a pen and ink
Yeah.
to Brian. She'll sign, and then I'll co-sign. We can do that. Great. Okay, the next agenda item, and as routine for our monthly meetings, we open this planning commission to any public comments, and we stress that we would prefer that the public comments by anyone be pertaining to items not on tonight's agenda. I will give time for the public to make any comments under each agenda item, so that's why we say if it's already on the agenda, if I could ask for your patience to make those comments at that time. So for any other items not on the agenda, is there any interest here for a public comment? Once again, is there any interest in public comment on items not on the agenda? Not seeing any interest, I close the public comment or citizen comment section of tonight's agenda, and now I move to a quick roll-up and summary from our Carroll and Frederick County planners. Our Carroll County planner, Ms. Hannah Weber, out of Westminster, has sent her regrets that she's under the weather and she will not attend this evening. But we do have the Frederick County planner, Justin Berker. Justin, please come forward. What's going on in Frederick County of interest to Mount Airy?
Good evening, Planning Commission. The first item that I have is the transmission line project. Frederick County encourages residents to provide feedback on the transmission line project to the Public Service Commission and the Public Service Enterprise Group. Please check the county website for links on the survey and additional information. That's completely, there was a lot of comments about that, but that's something that's, the county really doesn't have any, anything that they really can't, it's really out of our wheelhouse is kind of what our point is. So you'd have to reach out to them for any information, additional information. Then the next item I have is Bill 2412, the growth moratorium. A residential growth moratorium ordinance is in front of the Planning Commission on August 21st. For more information, see the county's webpage under the County Council. And that's also being broadcast, and there's the public input portal as well. So we encourage you to provide feedback for that as well. And the last item that I have is the Alpine Ligonor preliminary subdivision plan. It's 488 age-restricted units, 192 of them are single-family detached, 184 of them are single-family attached, and there are 112 multifamily units. And that will be in front of the Planning Commission on August 14th.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for Mr. Berker on Frederick County? Commissioner O'Malley?
Just a comment.
Let me get Steve first, and then I'll come to you.
Just the growth moratorium, who's behind that? Is it the council or is
Yep, it's through the council.
who sponsored it, do you know?
I believe it was McKay, I believe. I really don't have a lot of information on that. That's something that I don't necessarily look into, and as staff, are also recommending people to reach out to council for any of these matters.
Thank you.
Commissioner Butts?
Okay. Justin, can you keep us apprised as there's progress and so forth on this transmission line project?
Sorry, I
Bill,
didn't.
Bill, can you please pull your mic towards you?
Okay, sorry. Would you please keep us apprised going forward of developments on the transmission line project?
Somebody from Frederick County would probably be able to provide that. This is unfortunately my last meeting with the, I'm heading to Miami for graduate school.
Oh, well, we will miss you.
Likewise.
Any other commissioner questions? I have a quick question, just to clarify the moratorium that was brought up by Commissioner O'Malley. Does moratorium translate into no work permits, no public works agreements for those developments regarding residential development? What is the moratorium's bottom line, Justin, with regard to building?
I really can't answer that. I don't have enough. I didn't really dig into what the bill was, and
Okay.
I don't have any additional information I can provide with you
Okay.
for that. But I know it is on our website, and
Gotcha.
it is going to be in front of the Planning Commission. You're welcome to check in and watch that and provide public input.
Okay.
It is broadcast on our website.
That's fair. And again, in closing, on behalf of all the commissioners, and as a matter of fact, I risk saying on behalf of the town of Mount Airy, we, hopefully with council members' approval for me to say that. Thank you, Councilmember Munder. I want to thank you sincerely for the time that you've spent being our representative for all matters regarding planning and growth and municipal development from the Frederick County side of our town. These liaisons, just as a general statement, these liaisons are our touch point for the wider development efforts that impact our town, whether that development in Frederick County concerns Newmarket, and as you see here from these notes, Linganor's immense growth that's projected, right? And so this role is absolutely key and important for this communications with these volunteers here. So again, as a way of emphasizing that role and its importance, you've done really well serving Frederick County and us in being our liaison. So best of luck to you. It's Miami, Florida, and not Miami, Pennsylvania, isn't it?
No, it's
Okay.
Miami, Florida. Yeah.
So best of luck to you, and we wish you well. And as soon as your department identifies the new liaison, please feel free to have that person reach out to John and then link up with us, and we'd be more than happy to, start that new relationship with that new person. So thank you very much.
Ralph, I do have one question. So the August 21st meeting, do you know what time that is, and is that open to the public?
Yes, it's open to the public, and it's 9:30.
9:30 a.m., and that's at the Frederick County County Office Buildings?
It's in Winchester Hall.
Winchester Hall, and that's that's the Frederick County Commissioners or the Planning Commission?
It's the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Our next agenda item is introduction and discussion and recommendation to the Board of Appeals from the Planning Commission with regard to an application known as MA-BOA Board of Appeals -2024-03. This is the applicant is the St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church applying for a special exception request in order to begin a nursery school / childcare use within that facility. The facility's address is Center Street or?
It is Center Street,
It is Center Street, okay. And that's according to SDAT?
correct.
Okay. And so let's make sure we understand it's the address known as Center Street. If I could have the applicant regarding St. Andrews come forward, you're welcome to sit here, sirs. And as you get settled in, I will ask the town staff to do a quick summary of this application. And then I'll ask after that summary, sir, if you want to add anything that maybe is important or wasn't covered. So, John?
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. So again, this was MA-BOA 2024-03. St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. They are asking for a special exception under Section 112-25C2 for a nursery school and child care center at their existing location at 609 Center Street, I think is correct. And again, this is basically in front of you to go through the different steps of that request. If you look on my staff report, I've put my comments in red related to this. They basically meet all the criteria that's part of this request, and you're giving a recommendation back to the Board of Appeals for this special exception. And if you go to the last part of my, well, first off, I'll go ahead and let the applicant introduce yourself.
Are we pushing these?
As long as it's green, you're good to go.
Yeah. I'm Dan Melton. I'm the pastor of St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. And by the way, briefly, I was looking around at the room. Since I moved here 24 years ago in this area, this room has come a long, long way. Congratulations. So it's nice to be here, and thank you for having us.
Sure, thank you. So again, if you look at the floor plan up on the screen here, the daycare will actually be in these two smaller rooms down here. They do have facilities that are attached. They have a water sink area in both of the rooms, which is a requirement by state, from my understanding. They'll be somewhat limited when the amount of capacity they'll be able to have at the facility because of the size of the square footage. And again, one of the requirements for the state is they'll have to provide some type of an exterior fenced-in outdoor play area, which will be exiting out this side door right adjacent to the two rooms. Again, the size and the build-out of that is sort of, I think, really more up to the state than us to dictate what would have to be inside that play area. And you might be able to speak to that more, I don't know.
I believe the spec is 35 square feet a student.
Okay,
Per student
I believe so. Yeah.
for the fenced area?
I'm sorry, that was for the classroom. Yeah.
Okay. So,
and again, so I'll finish up with basically, let me scan down here to the next page. So this is, let me rotate this. I'm gonna have to go 3 times, but I apologize. So again, this is Watkins Park, which is currently zoned R2 to the north. The site here is, of course, the church. It's also bordered by RE zoning, R7 zoning, and CC zoning. So again, I feel like it might be a good reuse of the property. Sorry for the faded look on the screen here. It's kind of tough to see. But again, that's the SDAT and their formal request. So I don't know if you have any other questions for me, but we are asking for a favorable recommendation from the planning staff.
Correct.
For this request.
And so, thank you, Pastor, and thank you, John, for that. Normally, I would look down the line for a motion, and then we would deliberate on the motion. But in this instance, I'm going to go straight to a discussion and questions that any of the commissioners may have. Once we exhaust any questions from the commissioners, then I'll turn to anyone in the public that may want to offer a comment or a question. And I'll emphasize at that time, if there's any adjacent residents, I will try to give a priority to them because they live proximate to this parcel, as kind of common sense would say. So this is an R2 zone property right now, and so it's asking for a nursery school or childcare use. And under our code 11225C, paragraph 2, nursery school childcare use within an R2 district does require a special exception. There's a list of such special exceptions in that code under R2, and so we're just complying with the code and now looking at it as a special exception. As the town staff has identified, our job here tonight is to provide a recommendation to the Board of Appeals on that use, that exception use to involve a child care center within an R2 district. It's that straightforward. And then once the once the Board of Appeals takes it up on their agenda, they'll apply code 11262F10, which gives them guidance now as how to deliberate on the request for the special exemption. And so I just go through that, kind of educate everybody here that we're following the code. We're doing what the code dictates, and those are kind of the next steps in kind of a general education of where do we go from here after it's through the Planning Commission. So, and so I will go to then questions from the commissioners if they have any. I have a few, but I'll save them at the end. Any commissioners with any questions regarding this application? Commissioner Wallace?
Just one question on the staff report. On page 2, number 1, can you just, the wording of this sentence is a little bit confusing, I think. So the parcel's in the R2 zone, and so are we saying the parcel would allow more than the 12 children than what the applicant feels will comply? I'm not sure. Like, what are we saying here?
Right, so what I'm saying, I'm sorry, so basically, the code reads, it's one person, one pupil per 1,000 square feet in the RE, R2, R3. So in the R2 zone, with the total footage he has for the area of the classroom, that the 12 children's would be applicable.
Okay.
Sorry.
And that complies with the state requirements?
Well, and they would have to comply with the state of Maryland. So
Okay.
if they might calculate it differently than I did,
Okay,
they might say, we can only have 10,
gotcha.
based upon their staffing and et cetera.
Okay, thanks.
Any other commissioner questions for the applicant?
I just had a question about pickup and drop-off. How does the flow of parents coming in, dropping off, parking? Because it's young children, right? Preschool?
Yep.
Okay.
So it flows pretty well. There's, let's see, so that's coming up through Watkins Park there, and there's a drop-off right in front of the building, and then the parking lot continues up the hill in a circle, well, an ovular kind of like, yeah, thank you, toward Oak Street there and back. So there's a pretty good flow there.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner questions? I have two quick questions. The first one involves that access road, and because of us not knowing exactly what the permit from the state is going to say as to your maximum capacity, right?
Yeah.
And the maximum capacity, kind of guided by the size of the rooms that you're going to have that use, that capacity, that upper limit of children will then also dictate, I think, the size of the enclosed fence on the outside.
Yes, I'm sure.
Right, so it says in our code that we have to have included with this special exception going to the Board of Appeals, we have to see from the applicant a, quote, adequately sized play area, fully fenced and enclosed, but it's kind of chicken and egg in the sense that we really won't know what size that fenced area is until you go through the state application process.
Okay.
Is
Yep.
that fair?
Yes.
Right. And you can't go through the state application process until you clear the Board of Appeals, which then backs up to us for a recommendation. So I'm just kind of giving the full picture here. Although the code says that you have to present a plan for a fully enclosed area, that is to be determined later.
At the state. Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I
Gotcha.
think so.
Okay. The second question I have is maybe to the town engineer, and it kind of follows from Commissioner Hadley's question with regard to the access road. Do you see any added volume issues or concerns with now pickup and drop off of, let's say, anywhere from, I'm going to just kind of swing here, 12 to 24 children that may or may not be approved, but the added volume to the road, any kind of town, because we maintain that access road for the parcel, don't we?
We maintain it through the park up to their, where their driveway starts, yes, so part of it. But I don't see through the park, I don't see it being a problem for just 2 classrooms worth of pickups and drop-offs.
Gotcha. So with that clarity, I don't have any further questions. And so as I promised, I would turn to any public comment relative to this application. If there are any, if you could raise your hand, identify yourself, and come to the microphone. Once more, are there any public comments or interest in discussing this particular application tonight? Seeing none, I close the public comments regarding this application, and I now ask if the commissioners would like to provide a motion, either favorable or non-favorable, toward this application for favorable recommendation to the Board of Appeals with regard to the special exemption.
Do we need to mention the fence?
Yeah, so in the fence discussion, it's not there, and they can't size it.
Don't worry about it now.
I would just make sure we just say it's in compliance with the state requirements. So
Yeah, because
whatever
I'm
the
trying
state,
to figure out how to word the motion.
so whatever the state requires for the amount of pupils they can have based on their square footage by our code, then that size would have to be, in compliance with state code is how I would say it, for state requirements.
So hearing none, I'll offer a motion for the commissioners to consider and to look for a second. I make a motion to grant a favorable conditional recommendation to the Board of Appeals, a favorable conditional recommendation to the Board of Appeals regarding case MA-BOA-2024-03, request for special exception for a childcare use within the R2 district address of 609 Center Street, with the condition that you comply with all state requirements for such use.
I'll second.
I have a second from Commissioner Hatley. Is there any further discussion on the motion? See no further discussion. All those in favor of, I'll read it again. I make a motion to grant a favorable conditional recommendation to the Board of Appeals regarding case MA-BOA 2024-03, request for special exception for a child care use within the R2 district address of 609 Center Street, with the condition that you comply with all state requirements. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, Pastor.
So much for your consideration.
Our next agenda item is an introduction and discussion of the Tractor Supply Company signage and enclosures building permit. If I could ask for anyone representing the applicant to come forward. And before I ask the town staff to give us a summary as we did before, if I could just ask you to quickly give your name, introduce yourselves, please.
Elizabeth Morissette with Oxford Architecture.
Sonny Dixon, I am the current manager of Tractor Supply.
Sonny and Elizabeth, thank you. Welcome tonight. John, do you have a quick summary you can give us on this?
Sure. So I received a building permit application for these items. Typically, this would be possibly underneath a site plan or amended site plan. But because this parcel has already impervious outdoor storage area that's been already excavated and met all the requirements for stormwater management and the county's requirements and state requirements, that I'm sort of asking if we can let it go through a building permit process for me to approve it at my level. I just feel like this is something that should be brought in front of the Planning Commission for their guidance before signing off on the building permit. Again, so I'll run through real quick what they're proposing. They are proposing to provide a feed storage building behind the actual front of the building. If you look at the elevations here, so you have the existing Tractor Supply store to the left, and then you have the existing fencing that's kind of low and gray meshed there on the top elevation. If you look at the top elevation, it's kind of deceiving because there's actually the live garden center in front of the feed storage building in the back. And I'll switch to the site plan here. And it's really tough to see here, but you can kind of see this is the feed storage building here, which is really not additional sales floor area. This is really more for storage of large bag feed that they sell to local farmers and et cetera. And this is really more accessed by employees. And then at the front then, they're going to have a live garden center, which is actually shaded from, I think it has movable shades for when the plants are in there to sort of keep them from getting burnt up. As part of this also, they're going to be relocating the existing propane filament area. Currently, it's right closer to the building, kind of where the garden center is going. It's moving away from the building, which I feel as though is a good solution. I'd rather see the propane tank be as far away from any type of structure that has people in it.
Sure.
So again, I can switch back to the elevations. Well, here, I'll show you, this is the elevation of the garden center, if I can find my cursor. And this sort of shows what I'm talking about. It has a metal front to it, a metal facade with the garden center sign. And again, in the back here has movable shades that they can cover or uncover depending on outside elements. And then I will go through the next one here. Whoa. And this is the size of the sign that they're requesting. I apologize for that. Which is 13.6 by 6'3". And again, so this sign would be on the top of their garden center area, and this is in compliance with our current sign ordinance. The only thing I would say is that this is a box-style sign, which is LED lit, but this is their statement or their standard signage for all TSCs. So it's not just a one-off sign, it's their,
Gotcha.
I want to say not trademark, but it is what they have industry-wide.
Sunny, Elizabeth and Sunny, do you wish to add anything to the summary on the application?
No, I think you covered it. It was good.
So if I can quickly summarize before, and again, I'm going to save for a motion, we're going to go straight to discussion. Any questions, if I may, again, on this particular application. I believe, if I can summarize, John, a head nod, that we really have two structures being applied for. We're not going to do this under an amended site plan. We're going to do this under an approval for just going to the building permit phase. Is that correct? Right. And so there's two structures, and then there's a third element of this application with regard to the sign. Is that fair summary?
Correct. And also the approval of the relocation of the
Of the propane tank?
propane tank.
Okay. And so kind of turning to Tom here, the town attorney, with regard to us making a motion and a decision on this, would it be advisable that we take the structure separate from the signage, or can or should we be able to do everything under one motion?
I think you could do it under one motion. Typically, we do the signs separately, I believe.
Yeah, I would do the sign separately, because if I'm not mistaken, there is a sign behind this sign that you don't really see over top of the feed storage. Is that correct?
There's no sign above the feed
Okay,
storage.
okay, I wasn't sure.
Okay, so I'm inclined to do the same. So if I may entreat the commissioners that we'll first have a discussion on the two proposed structures, and then we'll have yet another discussion with regard to the signage that's been indicated here. With regard to the propane tank, is that a necessary deliberation and decision for you to allow that?
No, so it'll just be part of the building permit process. It's not an individual, like hazardous material or something like that. It'll just
Okay.
be part of just
So that's
the
rolled in
overall-
under the structure decision.
Correct. So to allow the structures, the propane tank has to move.
Gotcha. And I'll pause here for any commissioner input as to whether you see a wiser approach to take on this. So we got two motions to entertain tonight, structures and signage. And with that, I will open for many commissioners' discussions on structures only, the two structures proposed in this. One is enclosed. I believe it's only going to be employee access only. In front of it, not attached, is going to be a shaded area that is going to bear this sign, another issue, but it'll be the garden center area, so to speak. And that garden center area for public access from the parking lot will be the first thing they see coming into that current fence line, right? And they are not, they being the customers or the public, are not going to necessarily be allowed to go into the enclosed feed storage building. That's strictly for business storage, et cetera, employee, staff.
Yes, sir.
Got it, okay. So with that kind of added description of what's been proposed here, are there any questions on either of those structures?
I will say one thing. So the only reason why I'm bringing this to you this way instead of an amended site plan is because it is already impervious and has already been disturbed.
Right.
If it was not that and it was excavating anything, it would have to go through all of the reviews and fees for Carroll County.
Yeah. It's going right on the hard stand that exists there now.
Correct.
I call it hard stand, the concrete.
Yes.
Yeah, that concrete area. If there are no questions, I have a quick question with regard to now we're going to consider the propane tank relocation because you have propane storage and sales coming out of that current location. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right, and so you're going to relocate it to another area. I believe it was indicated that it's going to move behind kind of the main building? Is that?
No, sir, it's just going to slide to the right, probably about 25, 30 feet.
I gotcha, okay.
That way, it'll make room for the garden center to fit in there.
Right. And so I'm kind of angling back over to maybe some advice here with regard to a concern, or is there a concern with regard to the Mount Airy Volunteer Fire Company having a review or some perspective with regard to relocating that above-ground storage of a flammable liquid?
No, so they're already aware of the actual propane tank there, and they've already approved the current location. And I would think they'd be in favor of it moving away from an occupied building even more so.
But the new location is going to impede their access to it to address any kind of fire or anything? Gotcha, okay. That was where I was going. If you were going to say, in other words, if it was going to move behind the building, then I would have a concern that trucks or apparatus could get to it. You understand? But it doesn't seem that that's the case, and it's actually a wiser location.
And again, this is in the fenced-in area as well, and it's also protected by bollards all the way around it. So you're behind a fence, and it's also has steel bollards all the way around it. So even like a forklift that they have.
Can't run into it.
The only thing that could happen, I guess, hopefully would not be, is somebody could drive towards it with the forklift and pierce it, but I doubt that's, I've never heard of that happening. Hopefully, their forklift operators are certified not to do that.
Now you've jinxed it. The last comment I have is I believe you've provided this review, and that is the proposed new building doesn't exceed our height requirement limitations.
That's correct.
Okay, so it falls within that. So one more time, are there any commissioner discussions regarding solely the two structures being proposed? Hearing none, I turn to the public as to whether there's public comment with regard to solely the two structures being proposed. Mr. Fry, if you come forward and identify yourself. Gary, state your name.
Gary Fry, resident on Twin Arch. I guess my only question is there going to be any improvements to the exterior lighting of the building? I think it's that yard's lit up like wall packs, which kind of shine out. I was wondering if through the building permit process, it was going to require the lighting to be updated to the current town code.
Yeah, I don't think there's any proposed additional lighting that I know of from the plan.
There will be lighting in the live goods center and emergency lighting on the exterior of the feed center.
My concern is wash coming away from the building.
So he's wondering if there's full cutoff lights. So this site plan was probably approved before our town code now has requirements for full cutoff. So maybe we'll need to look at the lighting and have that modified to meet the new town code. So there might be some adjustments we need to do related to your lighting.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I can add Mr. Fry and to Elizabeth, Sonny, and to John, I did not see a photometric plan included in the, so there's not apparently additional lighting on
Right,
the
it would just
exterior.
be the existing lighting, the wall packs is my understanding. I didn't see, now Elizabeth did say there is additional lighting going in the live goods center. That's not shown on the plan. So again, we can work together with them as part of the building permit process to make sure that those wall packs meet today's code. And then any type of lighting for the live goods that it's basically focused down, because we're talking about this new dark sky type of lighting. We're trying to eliminate any kind of light bleed going up or even off the property.
Okay.
So we can work together on that.
That sounds completely reasonable. Any other public comments relative to this application for just the two structures? Seeing none, I close the public discussion regarding the two structures, and I now seek a motion from the commissioners with regard to a favorable or unfavorable recommendation regarding the application for the two structures in this plan.
I'll make a motion for a,
Commissioner Wallace? Okay.
yes, for a favorable recommendation of the new feed storage building and live goods center covered area.
Do I hear a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Commissioner Hadley seconds. Is there any further discussion regarding the favorable motion for the two structures as identified by Commissioner Wallace? Hearing no further discussion, it'll go to a vote on that motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Hearing none, the motion for the two structures is favorably approved unanimously. We'll now move to a discussion of the signage. John, excuse me, I keep,
Again,
Tom's over there.
no worries.
So the sign, I believe, is offered among many that are in the options list in the plans, right? There's several different signs offered in the plans, different sizes. And the one that I believe you're applying for is the one that is that dimension. Is
That's
that
correct.
accurate? Okay.
And
And the only reason I clarify that is because we were given kind of several flavors of signs here. And so if I may be so bold, jump ahead of the commissioner's questions on this one, and that's that none of the drive-through pickup signs are applicable to
That's
this
correct.
request.
Those do not apply.
Right, so they're off the table. It's solely the garden center sign that we see here, right?
Yes.
And just for clarity again, John and Sunny and Elizabeth, this is kind of the standard Tractor Supply Company logo for such.
It is, and the reason why you're seeing several different sizes is because they're, with the side yards varying throughout the company, there's different size garden centers, and the signs are applicable to the size of the garden center. So you don't have a smaller garden center with a larger sign, or
Makes
vice
sense.
versa.
Gotcha.
And I will mention, this is bigger than anything that's on your sheet that's in front of you. So it is larger than that, but because the garden center is larger than some of other Tractor Supplies.
That's right. And again, if I can ask just a couple of more questions, and that is, to be transparent, as I am always with the public, our current sign code is 112-11C, and 112-11C, subparagraph 9, gives a list of prohibited signs, and I'm kind of riffing off of what you said in the summary, and that is, in that list of prohibited signs for the town of Mount Airy, one of the items that is prohibited is lighted box sign. And this commission has had, prior to tonight, other instances of applicants coming forward for new signs in other businesses located elsewhere within the town. I would offer to the commissioners, if you recall those deliberations on those previous lighted box signs, we struggle with following the code as written, or we're looking to precedents as to making a decision on a lighted box sign application. And we have in the past sided with precedents to say they're common within the town, they do exist tastefully, and that we have decided to go ahead and render in the past, I'm not trying to allude to how we should motion on this occasion, but in the past, we have had that discussion, and we have examined those lighted box sign applications, and we have ruled favorably. Is that accurate, John?
That is correct.
Okay. And so this is a case where the commission is trying to do its best to follow this, but also be reasonable with precedents in a tasteful way. And so I just mentioned that to be transparent to the public with regard to this. I'll turn now to any other commissioner who has a question solely upon the sign application.
What's the current Tractor Supply sign, how would you describe that with the red with the TSC on it? Is that box or is that just,
I can answer that. So their logo with the TSC in it is a box style sign.
It is.
And then the lettering are individual letters, is my understanding. Not to say that this sign couldn't have a green background with, raised letters and possibly raised vegetables and stuff. Again, it's not their standard, not to say they couldn't do that. It's really up to the planning commission to make that suggestion. I mean, you could say, well, we want this on a green background with raised white lettering and raised vegetables and garden tools. Might be a little challenging, but I think they could possibly do it. But again, it's not their standard logo for these garden centers. It's kind of like telling McDonald's to paint your arches pink,
Right.
you know, I don't know.
I don't know if I feel like being that fussy, about the whole, how does everyone else feel?
I think the photometric plan and working through their lighting is more important
Yeah.
than a box sign.
Yeah.
But
Any other commissioner questions? I have one quick alibi, Sonny and Elizabeth, and that is the shape of this preferred sign and the apex angle, does it intend to match the angle of the garden center roof line also? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
It fits in and
It's the same
kind of,
symmetrical shape.
bingo, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, even better, it fits the facade of that front top section. That's good. If there are no further commissioner questions, I'll entertain any public comments regarding the signage application we've been discussing.
I just have one.
Commissioner
comment.
Wallace? Sure, an alibi, yeah.
Sorry. Just looking at the proportions, I mean, I agree that it's symmetrical on that building, but if you look at the Tractor Supply sign, right, proportional to the rest of the building, I don't think the garden center sign is essentially taking up 1/3 of the front face of that building. Like that, it's 13 feet and the building's around 30-ish. If you look at the width of the Tractor Supply frontage, if this is to scale, which I think it is,
it is.
it just, that seems a little bit disproportionate to me. So that's my only comment.
As in too big? As in too big? Or-
Well, as in the Tractor Supply sign doesn't seem to be taking up just by looking at this, it doesn't appear to be taking up 1/3 of the front of the building. The garden center does, so anyway, I was just pointing out that it's a little bit disproportionate. Yeah.
If you go to your last page into the sizes there, again, these are some of their standard sizes. I mean, if you're more comfortable with the 10 by 4'6", which is 45 square feet, maybe that might be more proportional to what you're talking about.
Question, how long has Tractor Supply had this? Is this the original logo?
For the garden center,
No, the TSC.
yes, it's a trademark logo.
Asking, that's the original signage from when the building was built.
All right, so how long has it been there?
I believe that building was erected in the mid-'80s,
That's what I thought.
through the mid-'80s.
It's held up well.
Yeah.
Ralph, one more thing. Sure. So you're the architect?
Yes.
Okay, so what is your opinion then on the proportional, I don't know what the right word, proportionality of the garden center sign versus the Tractor Supply sign on the other building? Would a smaller sign for the garden center, smaller lighted sign, the 45 square foot work?
It would. Truthfully, though, the signage vendor, they handle all of the permitting process and picking the sign based off of, the local requirements. And I am not positive that they won't replace the building sign at some point also. I would have to check with, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I would have to check with the project manager, because sometimes when they're going through the remodels, they will assess the quality of the sign, how old the sign is. It's definitely an older sign at this store.
Right.
So potentially, they could get a new sign that would be more proportional. Otherwise, we've definitely done a smaller sign as well on the garden center when required.
Okay.
When that's,
Request if there is going to be a change, you keep us apprised?
well,
Yes.
Bill, they would have to come in for an application for that would come in front of you for approval.
Good.
So if there's no further commissioner discussion, then I'm looking for a motion with respect to the approval of the signage. And if in your motion, you could specify exactly which sign, and that specification would be, if I may recommend, the square footage sign. So the preferred one, just to recap, is 85 square feet, I believe.
That's what the applicant's requesting.
And then I believe the next size down, based upon this, is 45, and then it goes smaller and smaller from there. So again, if I could ask for the commissioner's motion to be specific about what square footage sign you're referring to in your motion. I'm open to a motion.
I was going to comment.
I'm sorry, Commissioner O'Malley, did you have a quick question?
No, well, I did, what's the size difference between the two signs?
So one is,
John, if you want to answer
one
that.
is 10 feet wide, and the other one is, what is it, 13 foot 6, so, yeah, I'm gonna say, was it like 20% or 25%
The main,
smaller?
the main sign's 13, correct?
Yes, 13.6
Okay.
by 6 foot 3.
The garden center sign.
No, I meant between the main Tractor Supply sign.
Oh, I don't know, I don't have dimensions of that Tractor Supply sign in relationship to this sign, is that what you're asking? I don't have that information.
Shoot, I'm going to jump in here too with an alibi. If we were to consider the 45 square foot sign, which is the next sign down, would or would it not now be symmetrical to the roof line of the proposed structure?
I'm not positive. This, like I said, the
Talking
sign
about the
vendor, yeah,
angles.
they design it based off to be proportional, so I would think that it would. Even with a smaller one, they'll kind of tweak it a little bit.
The signs are gonna be in the same,
Match the roof line?
right, it'll match the roof line, yes, sir.
Okay. Again, no further commissioner questions or comments. I'll open for a motion, and please be specific as to which sign is being addressed.
No one objects. I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve the garden center sign for the 85 square foot.
Is there any second for that motion?
No second.
Commissioner Butts seconds Commissioner Hadley's motion. Is there any further discussion regarding the 85 square foot sign in the application? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as stated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
One nay. Commissioner O'Malley? The motion passes. Thank you. I believe that closes this application, John?
That is correct.
Both structures and signs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sunny and
And
Elizabeth.
we want to see the photometric plan and whatever lighting, and also the existing wall packs. I'd like to see what you're proposing there to replace those. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody voted. Stephen was a no. Yep. 5-1.
The next item on our agenda is item number 7, the introduction and discussion and recommendation to the town council. This is a recommendation to the town's council with respect to annexation plan 2024-46. This is known as the Pankland LLC Pank Property Request for Annexation into the town. And in that annexation, it would require a zoning change. Their annexation request includes a recommended or proposed zoning change from its current county zoning to our town industrial zoning. And if there's an applicant here or representatives, you're welcome to come forward. And if I could just ask you quickly, identify yourselves. We'll then turn afterwards to John for a quick summary. Welcome.
Tom Pank on behalf of the applicant.
Bruce Dean, I'm Mr. Pank's attorney.
Bruce and Tom, welcome to the Planning Commission. John, can you give us a quick summary?
Sure. So we received this application for annexation. And again, this is to give a recommendation. Town council received it and forwarded it to us for review and recommendation back to them. Again, this is kind of an interesting parcel in a way in our 2013 master plan with the line weight that we had on our maps showing annexations and ultimate town boundaries or the municipal growth boundaries. This parcel is underneath the line because it's so small, you couldn't even see it. So it wasn't labeled as a parcel for annexation because it was somewhat hidden. I think the ultimate intent the ultimate position of the town is that it should be within our corporate limits at some point in time or another. This is the time for this to be brought into the town in compliance with our regulations. The property owner of the 1.3 acre parcel also owns two parcels to the west and south, comprised of about 50 acres. One parcel is 10 acres, the other one's 40 acres. Again, the parcel currently is zoned R40,000, and as you alluded to, the county commissioners would have to provide a waiver to allow that to go from R40,000 residential to an industrial zoning within the town. I don't know their position on that. If the commissioners don't grant a waiver, the parcel in 5 years could be automatically chosen. The town could then choose, if it's annexed, it could be annexed but not developed on, or if we don't receive the waiver, we can actually, in 5 years, zone it industrial if that's what the town council wants to do ultimately. Again, we are asking for a favorable recommendation from the planning staff. There are some concerns that I had as I was writing the staff report with some of the language that's inside of the request. I think ultimately this specific parcel, we're just looking at the 1.3 acres. We're not looking at the other 50 acres. When those 50 acres come in, ultimately they will be going through a site development plan, and any requirements that might be part of the total site development plan would have to be in compliance with the town code and the uses that are being dictated onto that property.
Gotcha. And so, Mr. Pank or Brian, if you have anything to add to the application that wasn't covered?
No, I would just add that everything John said is correct, that no site development plan is being proposed for either the 1.3 acres or the 50 acres at this time. And I know Tom completely understands that, at time that a development does come through, it will have to meet all town codes, your adequate public facilities ordinance. And it's my belief that the town's codes are stringent enough and certainly applied well by the town. And so Mr. Pank is fully aware that issues like traffic, road frontage improvements, all that will have to be addressed at that time. But at this time, we're literally just annexing this to straighten out a property line as much as anything else. Anything you want to add, Tom?
I got the parcel when the lady passed away and the house has been abandoned and the house will get torn down and it'll just be a straight line and cleaned up. The well will get shut down. There's still a well on the property.
Right.
But that's all, in the plans to get closed down. But when the ultimate site plan approvals get done for building something on the site, well, then we'll come back to the town. But I just wanted to be clear that this is a simple annexation to add this to the town, and then it falls under your control.
Gotcha. And so before I turn then to the commissioner's questions, and we'll move straight to discussion again on this agenda item, and that is just a quick history. So as mentioned by John, the 2013 master plan, the current one, did not show this as a recommended annexation because of, I guess, just kind of the map reality. It's so thin. The line where we show the annexations in the town boundary kind of covered it up. But notwithstanding that map error on 2013, it is within the municipal growth area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it is within the potential annexations of adjoining boundaries. And so I'll go to the next point using adjoining, and that is it doesn't create an enclave. It is contiguous to the current town border, which of course is a key item of any annexation recommendation or consideration by the council. In March of 2024, I believe you provided the petition to the town for this annexation. That was in March of 2024. The town staff then took that petition to the town council. They introduced it in the town council meeting in May 6th of this year. The town council looked at it immediately after introduction, then pushed it to the planning commission for our agenda for a recommendation. After we deliberated on it tonight and provide that recommendation, it will then be taken back up by the town council for their final decision. And as a part of that final decision, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they'll also set a public hearing date
That's correct.
to also consider an annexation of any outside boundary property into the town. So that's kind of the road ahead. That's the history. If I'm all accurate on that, go
Yeah,
ahead, John.
so part of the request is we also get an adjoining property owner list, and we also sign the property prior to the meeting. Those letters were sent out to all adjoining property owners, and also the property was signed for 7 days.
Beautiful, okay. And again, it's just some last comments before I turn to the other commissioners. The idea here for this enclave, for this narrow strip, is to be co-joined to the existing inside town property that in toto, perhaps I'll use the words, grand scheme down the road is to have it as a part of the Grand Century Business Park. Is that an accurate statement?
Correct.
To be determined? I know
That's exactly correct.
I'm not getting over my skis, I
No,
hope.
you're not, you stated it exactly correctly.
Okay, good. All right. So it's in that big picture that we're deliberating on adding in this small piece of land adjoining the Mount Airy Volunteer Fire Company Fairgrounds with some frontage on Twin Arch Road, correct? With a house on it that is no longer used, doesn't intend to be used, because if you ask for industrial district zoning, you can't have a residential use on that. We all know that. Gotcha. So you've addressed that concern. Is there any questions from the commissioners regarding the application for annexation?
I just want to clarify, so this parcel doesn't actually abort, the Mount Airy Volunteer Fire Company is on this side. Mr. Pank owns this parcel here, which is part of that 10-acre parcel. And then this parcel is just basically adjoined by his parcel to the west and the south. Going to the east, it's actually this parcel here, a driveway to a resident that lives back here within the county. So this currently is in the county, and all this is in the county. This is in the county as well. The corporate limits sort of go across the road and down on the other side of Twin Arch Road.
And so the Pank Land LLC property between the application and the fairgrounds is already in.
It's already zoned industrial within the town.
It's already industrial and inside the town. Gotcha. Thank you for that,
correct.
John.
What's the combined acreage?
About 51, when you add all three parcels.
No, I think it becomes 50. Well, whatever. Yeah, 50 or 51, something like that.
Okay. All right.
I just have a couple.
Commissioner
things.
Wallace,
Yes.
sure.
So first is in the documentation that we received and the annexation resolution draft from the council. There's several mentions of bringing it in as R2 zoning. So I don't know if that was just a typo, but there's,
Not in our.
I know, that's what I'm saying, is I think on somewhere this, so on the
The
annexation, yeah, the resolution,
Resolution to
Yeah.
be signed later,
yes.
2024-46.
Yes, on page 2.
Typo then.
There's, yeah, the third paragraph, kind of almost towards the bottom of it, maybe it's the last sentence.
Oh,
Mr. McCarron and I'm sure will clean that up before we get to the council meeting, but thank you for pointing that out. I did not see that.
Yeah.
page 2 of 6 on the resolution in the very middle. You see that whereas the Town Planning Commission reviewed the proposed annexation and proposed R2 zoning? So that's proposed industrial or I zoning?
Yeah, it's in
Thank you very much for that.
paragraphs 3 and 4, and then also on page 5, paragraph 5.
Page 5, paragraph 5. Correct.
And then the only other question I had is, I understand that the property, the R40,000 property is Carroll County and it's not town. Is there typically any type of buffer between industrial and residential?
Yeah.
Required town buffer between industrial and residential.
Yep.
I think it's 50 feet.
It's a 50-foot buffer. And
50-foot structure, 25-foot parking.
yes, but there'll also have to be a Class A screening down on that parcel, part of the parcel. So basically heading down between the new annexed land and also the adjoining residential, there'll have to be some type of screening part of that.
Landscape buffer, I assume.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, I just wasn't sure between county and town what
It
the.
would still have
Yeah.
to comply
Okay.
with that requirement.
Thank you.
You can.
Okay. I had a question about the waiver that says that Carroll County has to grant a zoning waiver pursuant of their code. What's the status of, is that almost like chicken and egg kind of thing?
They get a 60-day review. After this meeting, I'll be forwarding it to them and also the state for their 60-day review. That information will come back and will go along with your recommendation to the town council for them to determine a public hearing.
So we go first and then they go.
Correct. They went first, you're second.
Okay.
They got it, they sent it to you. You're giving it back to them with recommendations after we get the state of Maryland and Carroll County's 60-day review as well.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may trail on that, does our motion need to address the waiver's approval in a condition motion, or is that necessary?
It's not necessary. The town council will approve this, and by the time, when the town council takes it up for approval, I should say.
Okay.
By then, we're likely to have a waiver.
Okay.
And Tom, real quick, because of the R2 mentions in here, when we make our motion, should we say what type of zoning or just that we approve the annexation?
I think it's an error. The petition says aye, so I
Okay.
don't think you need to specify.
Don't even worry about it. Okay, thank you.
You guys got the edits, so,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you, both Commissioner Wallace for the keen eye, and Commissioner Hadley. Any other commissioner questions with regard to the annexation petition?
I just have one more question.
Sure.
So understanding this was not included in the 2013 master plan.
It was not designated as an annexation, but yet it was within our growth boundary. Again, is that the mapping amendment? And I should have took a picture of that because the blue fat line they had with their ultimate town boundaries or our municipal growth boundaries, this parcel was hidden.
Under map line.
So are we following the proper process, or should this be part of the current master plan that's being written?
No, we are following the process again, and ultimately, the Carroll County and the state of Maryland will be reviewing this for their 60-day review. If they see an issue with that, they would bring that up as well. If the state of Maryland says, no, it wasn't labeled on your annexation plan, we can't allow this to move forward, then we might have to do an amendment or have part of our rezoning request as part of the master plan, 2023 master plan.
Yes, yeah, so Commissioner Wallace asked, again, a really good question. And so just to clarify, because I'm kind of Joe Tempeg here, and that is not having it included in the list of proposed annexation properties in the current master plan doesn't impede us from a favorable recommendation to the town council?
I do not think so.
No.
Okay.
It is within the municipal growth
Area.
boundary
Correct.
of the town.
And the county, yep.
And if you want, here's the example here, you can pass it down to look at it. It's a little blip of a corner. It's basically this corner of the site that you can see, this little tiny piece here, that's not colored in because it's actually in the county. But I don't feel like it's going to be an issue through the state or the county because it is in our municipal growth boundaries.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Commissioner O'Malley?
I had a question for John.
Go ahead.
In the recommendation, it says, as long as the petitioner successfully resolved the outstanding areas of concern outlined in this memorandum, is the main concern for you as the town planner the growth boundary? Is that we're interpreting?
No, one of my biggest concerns was some of the verbiage in the request. It talked about off-site improvements not being required. And I just want to make sure that the applicant and the planning commission understood that, ultimately the parcel, when it comes in for development, would have to meet all the town code requirements depending on the use. So it was just interpretation. I just want to make sure that everybody on the planning commission understood that this piece is being annexed. This specific piece isn't going to require any off-site improvements, but when it comes back in as an industrial property as part of the consolidation of all three parcels for possibly, and that might be a requirement, part of that site development plan, is that these get combined as one parcel, and then that parcel, the new parcel that's 51 or 50 acres would be required to provide whatever off-site improvements that would be needed for that site development plan. And that site development plan would be coming in front of you guys for approval as well.
Okay, if I could I interject for a
Sure,
second?
go ahead.
Because I'm the one who submitted the documents that John's referring to, and I've done, I'm not patting myself on the back, I've just been doing this a long time. I've probably done 50 or more annexations throughout mid-central Maryland. The language that was in that document was because oftentimes at time of annexation, a municipality puts additional requirements on the annexed property over and above those that are already in your code. And I can give you examples, though I don't want to scare Mr. Pank by giving you ideas of things that you could ask for. But an annexation is a pretty unique animal under Maryland land use law. It is a completely voluntary act, both by the town and by the petitioner. And sometimes when you're doing, and I'm sure you guys, I've seen it, I haven't represented any of the owners doing the large annexations in Mount Airy, but I'm sure that when the town is looking at a 100-acre annexation, you would definitely consider off-site improvements that you might want to require that your town code might not necessarily capture. And I think what John was trying to make sure is that we knew that we were subject to all the town requirements, and we are, and we get that. I just put that language in there that you weren't going to impose something above and beyond what's already in there. Like, you're going to build us a new water tower. And it's like, Mr. Pank isn't interested in building a new water tower for a 1.3-acre site, that's all.
Excuse me. So specifically, we're referring to the petition's paragraph 13 here. Is that correct, Bruce?
I believe that's correct.
Right, and so let me read that for the public here. The town will, in your petition, in the applicant's petition to the town for annexation, and I emphasize that, it is not a site plan, it is not a use plan, it is for annexation. Paragraph 13 in your petition says, the town will not require the owners or developers of the property individually or collectively to provide any additional off-site improvements as a condition of this annexation, unless otherwise provided herein or required by written agreement between the town and the owners or developers of the property, and only to the extent allowed by law. Is that specifically what you're addressing?
That is exactly what I'm addressing. And you may have noticed in your package, I believe the town has already prepared a draft annexation agreement between Mr. Pank and the town.
Resolution, yes.
Well, no, and there's not an annexation agreement. There's and it has a blank, right, Tom? So that if the town wanted to impose something like a water tower, that's the blank where you would insert it.
At the council level.
At the council level.
Correct.
But in my petition, we were basically asking the town not to do that, not to add any additional conditions. But as we've discussed this with John and Tom, you know, if the condition comes up at the council level that Mr. Pank can't live with, he can withdraw the application, withdraw the annexation.
And again, this is for the purpose of solely annexation.
Just annexation. We know 100% that we are.
The paragraph doesn't constrain any obligation of the owners or developers at the time that you then come forward later.
Correct.
When it is industrial zone, when you do want to do an industrial use on it, and there's a site plan or a concept plan relative to that specific use. This paragraph doesn't handcuff us from
Not
any
one bit.
discussions on off-site improvements.
Correct.
I'm speaking to improvements on Twin Arch for traffic, for any and all things off-site.
We understand.
Everything
Okay.
within the industrial zone, when I go, it falls into town control, and the entire property as a whole falls in town control, so that anything that I have to do to meet the town requirements, I have to meet. I'm just saying, I wanted to be clear that you don't get an extra gimme by just letting me annex it. That's all.
Okay.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Sorry. That same document, paragraph 10, can you just explain what is meant by the town expressly acknowledges that the established uses on the property existing as of the date of this petition are exempt from the town's APFO? Is that just because it's currently county?
It's because it's currently in the county, and as Mr. Pank indicated, we're tearing down the house, so there will not be any improvements. Right?
Yeah.
So there'd be no residential, or no open space requirement.
Anybody who's seen the house knows nobody's going to want to live in it. Nobody's going to fix it.
So you're in there's the legal document all the way in the back, the draft annexation agreement for annexation resolutions. And then again, I just noticed on page 6, 3.2.2, or 3.2.2, there's towns R2 zoning district. Should that be changed to industrial?
I'll do a search.
Okay.
Solve all that.
It popped up. So this is the one that you guys are working through now.
Well, typically what happens is that after the public hearing and the town council gets public comment,
Okay.
usually a period between then and the meeting at which the town council will announce that they will take it up for approval. In between then and before then, town council usually identifies things they may or may not want to have in the annexation agreement.
Okay.
They will direct me to negotiate basically with the other side, and either it becomes mutually acceptable or it does not. Typically, we usually find a way to negotiate it, and then we have a completed annexation agreement, resolution, and all of that with all terms mutually agreed upon, and then the town council acts upon it.
There's nothing in here that should prevent our decision tonight. Okay.
In the staff summary, John, if I can ask you to focus on, at the very bottom of page 2, you have a list of areas of concern. And in your recommendation to this planning commission, you have wording that says the recommendation would be conditioned on successful resolution of the outstanding areas of concern outlined in your staff summary. So if we could just focus on those areas, do those areas still hold given this deliberation and discussion tonight, or do those areas need to be a part of the condition of any motion?
I don't think it has to be part of any motion. I think the recommendation would be either in favor or a denial. These were just concerns as I was going through the request for annexation. They mentioned that, that it was not a well-recharged area. Well, currently it's not because it's in the county, and I'd defer to Barney on that, but I thought the majority of the town is in a well-recharged area. The impact of proposed development to town water, sewer, road capacity. Again, this is all talking to the site development plan. So I was just trying to make sure you guys were aware of my concerns related to that, not really related to the annexation.
Just
wanted to make sure you understood by annexing this, it becomes part of that industrial zone. And these are concerns I had as I was writing my staff report.
I love thinking ahead, so no, I appreciate that. And so I'll turn to Barney. Given those concerns, wellhead, recharge, road capacity, do you echo what John says, that for the purposes of annexation, those aren't any outstanding concerns that need to be resolved, and they would be addressed later on a site plan?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, all right. So then I think we would, on your recommendation, John, given this discussion, we don't have a condition based on resolving, right? And we don't have a need to create a site development plan. At this stage, it's just annexation recommendation.
It's annexation.
I'm with you. I'm just clarifying here.
Yep.
And if the commissioners followed me on that, then I think if we've exhausted our discussion about this annexation, I'm open to any public comment regarding the annexation. Raise your hand and come forward. Council Member Demoter, if you could identify yourself, and Mr. Fry, you'll be next.
All right, good evening, everyone. Councilmember Stephen Demoter. A couple questions. So the first question is, you want to annex this property. My first question is, why now? Why not 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago? So let me get my questions out. Number one, why now? Number two, if this is annexed, can you share what is your intention once this gets annexed, along with your other 50 or so acres? What are your intentions in terms of use of that property? Can you give us a heads up? And number three, if you go to Exhibit D in the packet, there's no page number on it, but it's Exhibit D, it says future annexation areas. if you look on this map, there's a handwritten in red word that says parcel, and it has a red circle where this parcel is. And within that red hand-drawn circle is a icon that says potential well. So is this a potential well that could eventually be a production well if this piece of property is annexed? Is this map indeed accurate?
I can speak to that real quick.
Yes.
That specific question. So I'm not sure why they chose that for a well, but that is basically, there's an existing pond in this parcel here, if you look at the map here. So there's an existing pond, and that's the parcel they're actually talking about with the well, not this specific parcel. This parcel is to the west, and again, I wrote in parcel, circled it, and then tried to color it in. The piece that's a little red dot there is this bottom lower corner. The
Okay,
rest
so-
of it is hidden by the ultimate town.
So when I'm looking at this map and I see your hand-drawn red circle around this, this is telling me if that's the parcel, there's a potential well on that parcel. So is that a
The parcel
true
under
or
the
not
blue
true?
line. You
Okay,
can't see the parcel.
Okay, let me ask you the question. Is there a potential well that's going to be on this?
No,
Okay, so this is an inaccurate map then?
no, it's an accurate map.
Okay, all right, so let's focus on my first two questions. Thank you.
Mr. Fry, do you have any comments? Okay. And again, if you could just give us your name.
All right, Gary Fry. First, I'll answer yours. That's the 2013 master plan. When you look at the 2023 master plan, the future wells are in different locations. I don't know how they come up with that, but that's what that is. Got a couple things here. We need to take the blinders off on focusing on this map, and let's open up the whole 2013 master plan. And the intent, the goals, was to be harmonious with the surrounding area, go from intensive area use down to less intrusive area, excuse me. And then also protection of natural resources. So a couple things here. The town code is weak in regards to buffer. Yes, it's 50 feet, but you can go straight up at 50 feet. So that, you can see it, there's properties on Twin Arch where you see that vertical face of a building, and then you're looking uphill at a building, because that's gonna be uphill from the pond. So it's gonna be a giant shadow on a residential property. And a lot of the predecessors to this commission were very surprised that industrial could be zoned against residential. So that's one part of the pie here. The other one is there's a whole bunch of us that live on Twin Arch Road, and my neighbor's the one that adjoins, we're all on wells. There's already evidence by MDE that there's groundwater problems, so we're going to add industrial use. And again, it goes downhill because the water comes from the Carmel grounds going downhill. That pond, it's all part of the recharge. So while it's not part of the town's recharge area, all those county residents along Twin Arch Road have wells that we rely on the water. So I think if it gets annexed, that's one thing, but I really have heartache with industrial for the rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Any other public comments or interest on this application?
So I do have one point to make. So I don't think, and I'll ask Mr. Pank this, I don't think there's any designated buildings that would be down along this access portway. This is really just going to be coming in and out the Century Drive, across from Century Drive. I'm not sure if he's going to be building buildings down along this access to the larger parcel. Again, without having a site development plan, I can't tell where a building is. And again, if there was a building there, I'm not sure. We might have to set it back even farther from the property line to eliminate that type of impact to adjoining properties in the county.
And I hope I'm instructive here once again that, we gotta focus on what the application is. We're focusing on an annexation petition to be determined at some later time. In another discussion will be the use on that land, in a site development plan with all the concerns addressed by the citizens here. We don't have that information now. We don't know when the applicant would present that information, but right now, it's strictly an annexation. And so I'm just saying, I understand all those concerns with regard to water, with regard to building, with regard to residential buffering. They're all valid concerns, but kind of narrowing where this petition is just on adding this to the town boundary. So Commissioner Wallace, you had another comment?
I guess the only other comment is the applicant is seeking, well, I have two. The applicant is seeking industrial zoning.
Correct.
But
So he can have uses that, he can propose uses within the industrial district, buildings, impervious surfaces, and those sorts of things, but that's not included in this petition.
right, and what I'm saying is that the planning commission, while we might not be opposed to an annexation of the site, we could be opposed to the type of zoning. So that's, if I heard that correctly, I think that is an option. And then the other thing is, I would like to hear the answers to Steve's questions, please.
All right, well, first, let me, while we're talking about the situation with the recharge and the wells, there is an actual well on the site. And one of the things I held on, because that well could have possibly been used when the town didn't have water available, and perhaps I could have done something by having a well on my site. It's not a big enough well for what you guys would go to harvest water for the town, but there's a well on the site, so I held off on rezoning it. At this point in time, it's sort of a plan to, on a personal side, is get the site ready, because I want to find users that'll lease it. At that point in time, when someone says, okay, I want to do, let's say I want to put a medical building up here, then the site will be close enough to ready, flat enough that they can put a medical building. But then they come to the town, they say, okay, we have a medical building, we want to put it, here's our traffic loads, here's what we're going to do, and then a site plan gets developed that gives buffers and so forth. There's already guidance in your code that says what it is, and this parcel will fall into that. If it's not in the town, then it doesn't fall into that. It's a disjoint between the two. So forget the fact that the lines are the same and that it has to be the same zoning, or it doesn't have any change it makes no sense to have a residential parcel still there in that spot, or to make it commercial would not make sense, right? A 1 acre piece, it has to be logical. So I'm telling you that I have no tenant or proposed site plan other than a plan to level the site up. We've met with the town, we've come up with things. We're not going to access it from Twin Arch Road until a site plan comes in, and then we'll figure out the loads and what Twin Arch can take. We all know Twin Arch has traffic problems. So really, most likely, we're not going to be able to access Twin Arch Road until Century Drive is extended up to 27, and the loads are relieved off the intersection of Twin Arch and 27. The town said, hey, can you at least put in the plan of how you're designing the site, a provision to make it so if we want to have Twin Arch a through road to East Ridgeville, we can do that, which was counter to the prior administration's request of, we don't want any traffic on East Ridgeville. So I've put that into the plan so that if the town wants, there's the ability to run through there from Twin Arch through East Ridgeville.
In the context of a bypass, kind of?
I don't know if I really want to call it a bypass, but an alternative route at a minimum.
Right.
It's Twin Arch is, or East Ridgeville is not really wide.
Right.
Going up the hill there.
Right.
But to be clear, we're not
I
talking about
know,
a development
but
plan,
the
Tom.
the guy asked what my plans were, so I'm trying to answer that question.
No, that's fair.
So But this is just clean up the property line, annex it in, be done with it.
I understand. Okay. Are there any, let me once again solicit for any further public comment on this petition? Seeing none, I close the public comments on this petition. One more time across the dais here, do any commissioners have any further questions regarding the petition? John, do you have anything further to add?
The only thing I want to add is if you look at the map and our current zoning that's adjacent to this, we have CC to the west. We have industrial to the west. We have industrial to the south. We have industrial to the north. Industrial seems to be the correct zone to put on this parcel.
For this very small sliver,
For this very small sliver.
1.3 acres.
Yeah. I mean, it almost seems like spot zoning if we put a residential or limited commercial or neighborhood professional.
You're being consistent.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. Barney, anything you wish to add, concerns?
Nope.
Again, focused on just the petition for annexation.
Right.
So I think we've covered the waterfront here. I think we've put a fair wire brush to this petition. So I would open now for any motion from a commissioner with regard to a favorable or unfavorable recommendation to the town council.
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner O'Malley?
I'll make a motion for a favorable approval for 2024-46, the Pankland LLC annexation.
Before I ask for a second, would it be appropriate to ask him to amend that motion for a favorable recommendation because the town council actually does approval?
I'm sorry.
Okay, so if I could just quickly, with respect, Steve, if you could just.
Favorable recommendation. I'm sorry, I thought I said that. Sorry.
Gotcha. Is there a second to that motion?
Oh.
Commissioner?
Did you?
Well, I was also gonna, I don't know if I can talk an amendment before it's seconded.
Let me get a second on this, and then we can discuss and add amendments. Is there a second on the current motion?
I was going to second it.
Okay, Commissioner Hatley seconds it, so now the motion can be discussed and edited.
Well, I think
Commissioner
that
Walz?
if you're going to offer a favorable recommendation, it should be as stated by staff with the condition that they successfully resolve the outstanding areas of concern.
So if I may offer, I raised those areas of concern earlier, and according to the town staff, those areas of concern no longer existed with respect to just
the
annexation.
Okay.
And that at a later time, those areas of concern could be raised depending upon what they present in a site development plan.
Okay.
Is that fairly?
That's correct. Again, I was just trying to inform you of my concerns with this annexation related to a site development plan.
Okay.
So to your first point, there's a recommendation to edit it to comply with what is stated here. And so then if there's any other discussion, does anyone else support that edit by the current motion? Or is the current motion good enough?
The current motion's good enough for me.
Okay. All right, then. We have a motion by Commissioner O'Malley. We have a second from Commissioner Hatley. There's been discussion. There's no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion made by Commissioner O'Malley signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
No.
Commissioner Wallace, nay. The motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Dean and Mr. Pink.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Let me get on. So we're now on item 8. Very quickly, this regards to the open space waiver worksheet. As background, the town code requires that for any concept plan, the planning commission, while we are in a open space deficit, at any concept plan stage, regardless of district zoning, we have to answer and address some questions that are in the code. and then render a decision as to whether we would give that particular parcel's application, regardless of zoning, a waiver for the open space. Again, this is the basis of we're in a deficit for open space. So we put a wire brush to every concept plan specific to open space. In the June Planning Commission meeting, the draft open space waiver worksheet, which is a worksheet that the commissioners here devised in order to specifically focus on those questions required by the code. And so we are using this worksheet as a way to kind of just put a form together so that we don't miss any of the code required questions on any such plan. And so the June meeting resulted in, and this is captured in the minutes, I believe Commissioner Wallace asked that we bulletize some elements of question 3. I believe the revised worksheet addresses that, and so before I go to the next element of change in June, Commissioner Wallace, is that satisfying your?
Number 3?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so the new number 3 in the current worksheet meets that, that motion in June. And then I believe, Commissioner Beta, you asked for some rewording in question number 5. And so I asked the same question of you. Do you see the new worksheet complying with what you requested as amended by the town staff?
You should have it in your packet, right, Ralph? This is just the worksheet that I did.
I know I'm looking for it. I got so much paper up here.
Would you like one of my
I have a
copies?
copy as well, or, yeah, but you can.
So are we good to go then?
Yes, we are
Okay.
good to go.
So then, based on that, I think, and I won't necessarily take this to a motion. I'm just making sure that the worksheet is what everybody has agreed to. And we had some input, and so the town staff made edits. Any further discussion on the worksheet?
One tiny little thing.
Okay.
Someone from the public commented that it said worksheet questions at the top, but nothing was worded as a question, so we were going to strike the word.
I think it was adding the question marks.
Well, I think we said we're not going to add the question marks, we're just going to get rid of the word questions.
Yeah, that's right. Is it,
Yeah.
it's, the worksheet, the worksheet questions is still there.
Yeah, so that,
Technicality.
Yeah,
but-
that was that, we talked about that for
well,
a little while.
the minutes you just approved states that, so I apologize. I'll make sure that that's removed
Okay.
moving forward.
So is it fair to say then, if we were to remove the word questions on the second page, that the worksheet would then stand as acceptable for us to begin using for all open space waivers? Is that fair? Okay.
3 thumbs up.
Okay. And again, Tom, unless you want to correct me, I don't think we need to have a motion or any vote on
Actually
that
approved last time, I believe, by motion.
with those edits. And so, good. So I think we're good to go. We got a vehicle here to use, and I believe in an upcoming agenda item, we may have our first instance, right?
Correct, and I made copies of that are in front of you.
Correct.
The worksheet I did not fill out, but I did fill out the initial information.
Gotcha.
So Mr. Thompson didn't do this?
So let me,
Because last time
so
you
let
did
me,
it.
yeah, so let me quick,
Yeah, he did.
Commissioner Beta brought it up. So again, being completely transparent, the same code that presents these questions also says that the decision reached by using those questions contained on this specific worksheet will then be memorialized, I believe is the code word, and basically be documented. And so going back to June, I'm kind of in the rearview mirror here, but I think to your point, there was a deliberation on a residential-only concept plan for the Green Tree development, right?
Right.
And so that concept plan, of course, I mentioned earlier, this has to be exercised when we have any concept plan stage before us. So last month, this was still in flux, but nonetheless, we went forward with only the residential portion of Green Tree, right? And so with information provided by the applicant, you were invoking Mr. Thompson, I believe.
Correct, yes.
The information he provided, and because of the presentation at the time as an agenda item, the commission moved forward and went ahead and approved the waiver at that time with the information provided by the applicant. So then the question may rise, perhaps here or in the public, as to then if the worksheet was not used for that one instance in June, how are we going to memorialize it? And John, I'll let you address that. A memorandum, perhaps?
Exactly.
The minutes, perhaps?
And I probably I'll use our worksheet as well to make sure it's in compliance with
Okay.
the letter presented by Mr. Thompson.
Okay.
To memorialize it in that respect with an attached memo.
Right. So we will memorialize June's decision. And we will now move forward with making sure any such documentation on future concept plans will include this worksheet. End of,
And that also will be
end of speech.
And that'll go into the file, unless town council members want it sent to them for each plan.
Right.
It'll just be in the file related to that specific job.
That sounds good. Do all the commissioners accept that? I mean, is there any issue here? Okay. So we've got a good worksheet. We've got a little bit of retrospect on what happened in June and the rationale and how that's going to be documented. And so now we can move forward. I don't think there's anything else to discuss with regard to item 8 on our agenda. I move to item 9, which is introduction and discussion of the concept site development plan, known as S-22-0037. This is the Southside Plaza Concept Site Development Plan, and if I could ask for any representation of the applicant to come to the desk here. And before I turn to John for a summary, if I could ask you gentlemen to identify yourselves.
Ron Thompson, Vanmar Associates.
Shahid Rafiq, I'm the owner of the project.
For the commission. John, could you give us a quick roll-up on this?
Sure. So this is a site development plan down on the south side of Main Street, on the south side of Ridgeville Boulevard. This is adjacent to the Papa John's and the Comcast site that was just seen by the Planning Commission, I guess, about 6 months ago. And that project's been completed as well. I don't know if you've driven by and looked at it, but it's near invisible with the screening we put up. But anyway, so this concept site plan is in front of you for approval. It did go through Carroll County's review, the town of Mount Airy staff review. It has received stormwater management concept plan approval. Again, it's also gone through APFO requirements through our police department, fire department. Of course, schools are not applicable. Open space is not applicable because it's a residential, a non-residential use. Again, if I did print out the first sheet of the worksheet and put it in front of you this evening for this specific project, it's S-22-0037 is a limited commercial parcel, 1.08 acres, having dwelling units within this project, 0. Number of new residents are proposed, 0. What is 3 acres, number of new residents for project, 0. Open space requirements of the application, 0. What's the amount of open space being offered to the town? 0. And again, ultimately, the current deficit that the town is in is 75.03 acres, plus or minus. So again, I feel like to be able to grant the open space waiver, I feel is applicable. Again, so back to the site plan itself. Let me pull that up on the thing here. And my mouse is acting a little weird earlier, so hold on a second. Right with my left hand. So again, I don't know if you can see this very well. This did go in front of the Board of Appeals to allow a larger square foot building. They basically, the parcel came in, it's 4 parcels total. The plan that could have moved forward with a site development plan would have been 3 separate buildings, one here, and one here, of 2,500 square foot footprint. We are trying to be very considerate of the residentials that back up to this limited commercial to the west. These are the duplex townhouses that are sort of on the higher end. So again, notifications did go out to any adjoining property owner. We also signed the property along South Main Street. So this proposed site development plan does have a single entrance that comes in off of South Main Street. There's improvements along South Main Street that will either be done as part of the roundabout or potentially done part of this site development plan if the roundabout has not been completed prior to final approval of this plan and building permits being issued. Again, so the reduction to two separate buildings, one with a larger footprint towards Main Street, and then the secondary building at the rear. We did provide a ambulance turnaround area here, right in front of the dumpster area, which was a recommendation or request by the fire department. There is stormwater management that's going to be to the south and west of the parcel to cover all the impervious area from both the buildings and the parking lots. It does meet the requirements for parking spaces, and that's about it. The only other thing is this again is the Comcast parcel to the north that, again, we just saw. They have a right-of-way along the front here to gain access from the main street. And again, this is kind of where the complex is back here. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, John. Mr. Thompson or Mr. Patel, do you have anything to add to the summary?
No, just to point out, site was allowed to have 15,000 square feet. We're down around 12,000 square feet between the two buildings. As John pointed out in the Board of Appeals, our rationale was to try to move buildings next to the commercial center to the just to the north of it, and we have essentially microbiome facilities with landscaping near the residential area. We also, in our plan, have a not only landscaping along the property line, but particularly along the back lot. You'll note in the plan we have a privacy fence put up so that there's screening between the commercial site and the existing residential site. There. There is a stormwater management access existing that goes through, but it's all wooded, doesn't exist in reality. This now will provide that for the stormwater management facility for Ridgeville Heights. Is that what it's called? At that location. The use is something that desperately needed in the town of Mount Airy. Will probably, quite frankly, as we went through the Board of Appeals, put Mount Airy a little bit on the map in terms of Dr. O'Keefe's practice of dementia, Alzheimer's. Right now, you either go to Baltimore or Frederick, which is where his practice is. And a tremendous amount of citizens within Mount Airy that are having to have family bundle them up and take them to Frederick. This facility will meet that need in the surrounding, quite frankly, in the four-county area there. And one of the reasons you see the building design as it is, if there's a question, is that light into the facility is important for patient treatment. They need that openness coming in there. And his offices will be on the second story of the first building. he's partnering with a rehab facility that will be on the lower level, first floor, that is specific to treatment of patients with dementia and Alzheimer's. You know, you'd think of rehab, well, you hurt your shoulder, you go to rehab. Well, that's not the type of rehab that you need specifically geared to those people who have issues with Alzheimer's and dementia and mobility with that.
And so just for clarity, when we use the term the first building, we're talking about coming off of South Main Street, the first building being that office, right?
Right.
And then,
His building will be the first one. It's anticipated that, and there are rumors, other medical practices looking to locate into Mount Airy. This back building is being set up as a second medical
right,
type building.
and all outpatient, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
No surgery type.
No beds, there's not a hospital?
No.
Right, gotcha. Thank you for that added information. And so as I've done through the evening, I'll now turn to the commissioners for questions. And then at the end of that, I'll turn to any public interest or comments. And so I open now to any commissioner that have any questions about this. This is a concept plan, and so there are APFO issues. I would remind the commissioners that the applicant has also complied with our fairly new requirement to adhere to submission of 25-5 C and D statements from the applicant with regard to financial financial aspects of the development, and also the concept plan's compliance with environmental standards. You want to add to that?
And we also have our letter documenting 25G,
Open-
dash 5G,
open
which
space.
mirrors your form.
Right.
For open space. We take each one of those.
Correct.
And answer.
So that information.
Similar to Green Tree.
Right. And so those 25-5 APFO issues are in the packet. They have addressed them, and so I leave it to you as to whether you believe they satisfy the requirements or answer the question regarding finances and/or environmental compliance and/or open space. But the information is there, and thank you for providing that in accordance with our code. So again, I'll turn to any commissioner that may have questions. Commissioner Walls?
I have a few. One, John, on the public improvement section on page 2 of the staff report, it mentions the roundabout, and I was just curious, so it says this project will be issued an invoice for its prorate share of the roundabout project. Is that regardless of when this is approved or when the roundabout project starts? Or is it like only if this approval happens before the roundabout project?
I'm going to defer to engineering.
Sure. And as far as coming up with pro rata shares for the roundabout, this started with Chick-fil-A. They had put in close to $200,000 towards improvements. And looking at our total cost of the roundabout, there's a percentage, I think this one is around 2% of the total cost based on traffic counts. And it's got several properties that would pay into that, including the Voslo, the South Main Street annexation, which is a large portion of it, the Chick-fil-A, Southside Plaza, and next to Southside Plaza is the WJK properties that are also LC.
All right.
So,
And that's 2% of the town's portion of cost, not the total.
that's
Because you
2%
have
of the total.
Well, you have a public American infrastructure grant paying for the majority of that roundabout.
That's, the town has, a large share of that based on the existing traffic, and that's what that would go towards.
That all has to be worked out legally.
Right, I was just,
Because it's the Chick-fil-A roundabout, so we've got to try to work that out.
I was just curious if it was contingent on this approval. So the other one is on page 3 of the staff report, under APFO for sewer, there's an asterisk. And I was just curious what that was for.
That is a typo, I apologize.
Okay. The other question I had is about the photometric plan. I don't remember what sheet number that is, but it's showing, I think, I don't know, I'm not an engineer, but it looks like it's showing some light going right onto the houses behind. Is that correct?
We have to show, I think it's 0. We have to show that, we have to extend the photometric plan beyond the boundary of the property. But it should be showing
If you
0.
look at the
Okay.
monitor up there.
Oh,
Yes,
okay,
it has
okay.
numbers, but they're 0.0.
That's what, I couldn't tell what those were,
It's
so.
such a small scale, I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's
but-
okay, it's all right.
Yeah, so that should be all 0 plus 0.0.
Okay, and then the other question I had was on the landscaping plan. I noticed that the plantings, and I think this might just be due to a space limitation, but I noticed that all of the plantings along the back fence are only 2 feet tall, and I was wondering why we wouldn't go with something to create more of a green screen as well as the 6-foot fence.
We had the 6-foot fence, so they wouldn't, that planting would not be seen on the other side with the residential.
Right, that's why I was wondering if you could have something that grows above the 6-foot fence to create more buffer between the residential and the buildings, more of a visual buffer than just the 6-foot fence, because if you're in a 2-story home, which I believe those are, the 6-foot fence isn't really gonna do anything for you. So, that was just,
It's a question I guess we can look at.
and then the north elevation on both ways, I love the idea of natural light, I'm all about it. My family cannot stand in the summer that I have my blinds open. But, I mean, is there a reason, I mean, other than cost of windows, is there a reason that there's so few windows on the back? Or are there not gonna be any patient care areas on the back side of the buildings, on the north sides of the buildings?
North side, low light level.
Okay.
South side has the majority of the windows there.
Okay.
I can,
I was
from the
just-
architect, that's what I'm assuming.
Just curious. And then the only other question I have is about the exterior materials. It appears that they're like stark white and gray. I mean, I don't know if that's an accurate representation, but there's, like, if you look at other buildings in town, there's a lot more like brick features or, you know, even some faux wood features that this has, to me, it looks like it has minimal like softening of that facade. Other than, yeah, that little kind of area around those middle windows.
Fake window, fake
Yeah.
wood and.
It pretty much mirrors the building, the eye doctor across the street.
I looked at the eye doctor across, I actually go to that eye doctor. But the front of their building does have brick, in addition to like a grayish kind of tile or brick look, but it just softens a little bit more, and I think this is kind of like a stucco type material. It's EIFS or something like that. And so it just, to me, it looks like it's gonna be kind of plain white stucco with some gray, you know, accents, and then minimal, like, I don't know, it just seems, I understand for a medical building, you want it to be kind of, you want it to look clean, and have clean lines and everything, but I just thought that some additional materials to kind of soften that starkness would be something to consider. But those are my only comments.
Is the Papa John's white? Do you remember?
No, it's
Is
a
it-
cream,
it's
they
like a-
just did a color change. It's almost like it's like black with some creamy off-white.
Little softer.
Yeah. Nicer than the desert tan they used to be.
Gotcha.
Any other commissioner questions? Commissioner O'Malley?
I do have some comments here. I'll piggyback on Commissioner Wallace. It's kind of harsh to be next to residential with that kind of look. If it can be softened a little bit, that would be my recommendation. I have a question about the buffering. The distances between the residential and this development. How far with, you have the street there, or the parking, and the buildings to the closest residential's all around.
I'm reaching for my scale here.
Sure.
To the one in the rear,
Yeah, the rear and then to the left.
the building to it, to the property line?
Well, the building and then the parking too, the paved surface.
The building to the property line is about 60 to 70 feet, depending upon the angle of it.
Okay.
To the property line. To the house itself, it's closer to 100 feet. And of course, the parking, drive aisle and so forth, you know, we're probably about 5 to 10 feet off of that white fence.
Okay. And is it the same on the left too? To the other house or residential area?
Right, so you're talking down here to the,
Correct.
from
yeah.
here to there.
Mhm.
Again, that is zoned LC as well.
Okay,
So those ultimately will be coming in for redevelopment, most
Okay.
likely, at some point. Or it'll be a doctor's office possibly utilizing the existing building.
How close is the driveway to the property line?
6 feet.
6 feet.
Okay. And then the elevation on the back of the property to the residential area, what's the angle of the difference? Where it'll sit?
We're roughly 8 to 10 feet higher than the backyard.
Okay. And then okay, and you do have the section for an ambulance turnaround, correct there?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So I guess my concerns, I think it needs more buffering to be that close to residential. I like the idea of the project, but I don't think it's enough. You know, it's going to sit above that property. The building's going to be higher. I don't think there's enough between the hardscape and the actual property behind it. It's going to cause a lot more, ambulances are going to be there a lot.
No, I don't think any ambulance will come because it's a, neurology is as far away from, you know, acute care as you can get, except the stroke.
Okay.
So we are not having a stroke.
Okay.
It's primarily like it was mentioned that Parkinson's disease, degenerative change, like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, those kind of things. So those are the patients. That's what our thing was, that we have seen over the past 18 years that I'm practicing. A lot of Parkinson's disease patients come to Frederick, and the neurologist who treat them comes from Baltimore. Dr. Laura Brosby is the only Parkinson's disease specialist in these adjoining 4 or 5 counties. So she comes from Pikesville all the way to Frederick. So the whole idea was to curtail her commute plus provide service to Mount Airy.
Okay.
So it's primarily will be neurodegenerative and neuromuscular. The other doctor who will have office here is Dr. Burke, who comes from Ellicott City.
Okay.
So these 2 doctors will be here, and they go to Frederick at this point.
Okay, thank you. My last question really for the driveway, how close is it to the other driveways? Because that street is pretty challenging to get in and out of.
So, to your question, it's very close to the second driveway on the right here. Again, with the roundabout, I'm trying to see where the actual,
The roundabout will be below it, though. It won't be in the same area, correct?
Correct, the roundabout.
the roundabout's down over this way.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to see where here's the existing curb line that's there currently. It kind of tucks back in towards this driveway here. So again, ultimately, this is getting cut back even more to allow for a merge area into the parcel. Exiting, yes, it is very close to this parcel. I will say that when these two parcels come in for development, they'll be coming in off of Rising Ridge Road will be their main access. So their access, this access point and this access point will be eliminated as part of they come in for a site development plan. They will be coming in off of the top, off the roundabout Rising Ridge Road to gain access. And engineering and myself are we're on the same page with that.
Sure. Yeah, but right now, South Main Street, past that where the roundabout would be, and then this shopping center above it, like where the Papa John's is, and then with the gas station, it's like, it's a little crazy right now. Yeah, and then
Again-
the I place during the day. So it's just a lot on top of each other, and without, I don't see much improvement.
It's sort of the same thing with Green Tree, so
That's a
you have
lot more.
you have infill properties that are very limited with the abilities to have access points. You only have so much road frontage to work with. They've moved the entrance as far away from this commercial entrance as possible, and still maintain our 6-foot drainage utility easement requirements of the code. So I'm not sure how else we could gain access to this parcel when this is its only road frontage.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there, since we're talking about signs tonight, are you going to have any
We're
kind
talking
of
about what? I didn't,
signs?
signs, okay.
So I don't see anything in here, unless I missed it, about,
The
something.
final site plan will have a monument sign
A monument
that we
sign,
will be proposing.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
We were talking about that. I typically do not put them in the concept plan because I'm more focused on landscaping, stormwater management, layout. When I get past that, then we can focus on a monument sign.
Any other commissioner questions? Commissioner Beta?
Doctor, on a day with a building this size, what do you see as far as inflow of patients, and how long is a treatment or a rehabilitation appointment as far as time?
So, last time, John Baker, who lives in Mount Airy and will be having that set up, was here with us, but today he couldn't come. But therapy session, I'm not sure because I'm not the physiatrist, but it may take 1 hour or more. It's not like urgent care that a lot of patients will be coming in. Same thing with the neurology. Like both of these doctors that I mentioned, they see one new patient in 1 hour and one follow-up in 30 minutes. So they really take their time. So, and physical therapy is no less than that. So I'm not, I don't think there will be a lot of traffic.
Okay.
And part of Mr. Baker would be running Pivotal, the fitness rehabilitation in conjunction with Dr. Rakif's practice above. So it allows, if there's a need for the doctors to come down and visit and observe rehabilitation activities, they're able to just come down a floor
Just take the elevator down.
and deal with it.
It's a concept of collaboration between the physiatrist and the neurologist, because it's a neuro rehab. It will be primarily a neuro rehab, not orthopedic or back.
And the other, Mr. Baker was adamant about having a building of about this size because you can't just jam the equipment in. It's got to be, for the type of patients they would be treating, it's got to be spaced out because there's a spatial awareness issue that goes with the treatment.
Is there, just for my curiosity, is there any medical interventions used within this Alzheimer's and dementia patients?
Right, so now, I mean, they're coming in, like, but we are not going to do it here, like, if you're, I think, asking about DBS, like deep brain stimulation for Parkinson's disease or tremors, those are done by neurosurgeons in hospitals or, so, but after that, the programming is done by the neurologist who specializes in Parkinson's disease. And then the rehab for Parkinson's disease is entirely different than other, even within the like stroke rehab is different than the Parkinson's disease rehab. But altogether, neuro rehab is different than other orthopedics or cardiac rehab.
As far as the site plan is concerned, the only comment I have would maybe, as Mr. O'Malley had said, increasing the buffer at the back of that parking lot and maybe perhaps considering a taller fence from the 6 foot, maybe to
Or
an 8
taller
foot or
trees.
something to,
Like,
what do you think about that?
The only option we have, maybe we can go to an 8-foot fence and put in different landscaping back there.
Okay.
But that would be about, I can't move the pavement area.
Yeah.
Because of the town requirements.
Right.
And if I could trail on that, that consideration would be primarily for the Rising Ridge Road residents.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so it would be with respect to those screening, additional screening efforts.
Yeah.
But as far as the word buffer, setting any of the parking lot distance further away from the boundary, is that also recommended, or?
No, I was just basically looking at the screening.
Okay,
like to-
gotcha.
like, fast-growing plants or something, or trees, and maybe,
Exactly.
maybe having a higher fence there. That's all, just to kind of take some of the light out. and
Makes sense.
Maybe kind of have that delineation.
Any other commissioner questions? I have a few questions, and so to the south or to the left, as we have it arrayed here, there's a note that you have to do you have to recover some property that's currently used by the resident in their driveway. It's listed here as a saw cut. And so can you speak to that, Mr. Thompson or Doctor, and are there issues with that resident on getting that line corrected?
I don't believe, since it's on the property, it will have to come off there.
Okay.
I don't have a plan in front of, an
Right.
approved concept plan to
I understand.
talk to them about it, but I think if they're looking at, and they were at the Board of Appeals hearing because they were interested in what was happening here
Right.
for LC to determine
Right.
what they can do.
And again, I'm only asking the question in consideration of the residents. John, would we be able to say confidently the resident at that location is aware of this driveway saw cut?
Both of these parcels are rental properties, from my understanding. So the owner of the property, I'm sure, is aware of the saw cut.
Okay.
The renter probably doesn't even know that that portion of the driveway is on their property.
Right.
And to your buffer question, again, this currently is residential use, but it's in a LC zone. So the buffers on this side are less than at the rear of the property.
Understood.
So I don't think a requirement of any type of fencing here would be necessary. But in the rear of the property, I think, like you're saying, like a green giant arborvitae or something like that, that's, bagworm resistant, but fast grower, and something
Native.
that grows 30 to 40 feet tall, and,
And
6
native, right.
or 8 feet in diameter would be what we would want.
Understood.
Like, can I use green giant along that white fence? It's not native, but it would be the perfect screening. Everything else is native, but I will ask before I take great care in what I'm putting on, knowing I'm going to get that asked here.
I think that would be okay to put a few of those in there.
Okay, thank you.
Something similar to a green giant arborvitae.
Yeah, that was actually what I was thinking.
We
too.
actually did
We're
that.
going to get that in the minutes. That's a tremendous gimme.
Well, we did that
Mr. Thompson.
actually at the Dennis subdivision because we had very limited area
Sure.
to put in
Screening.
that type of screening that would get tall and be hardy. So
Sounds good.
I think the 6-foot height fence is probably adequate, because with the evergreens of that type would surely,
If we're doing the Jolly Green, they'll grow way above that quickly.
In 10 years, they'll be 20 feet tall or less, you know.
So to close my first point, we're fairly confident the owner of that residence is aware of this plan. And it would be the owner's responsibility to advise the tenant, since it is a leased residence. Is that fair? Okay. But you have presently no active contention, litigation against that property line or that saw cut on
No.
on their driveway, on their property. Gotcha. To the north, going toward the Papa John side, looking at the boundary on that side, there's a small enclave of, I think it's Comcast, Xfinity, IT communications surrounded by very large arborvitae. And so that fenced area right there, yeah, has an access gate. You want to put your point right in that bottom corner for the servicing, yeah. So there's an access gate there. So I don't see, but I'm asking the question, we don't see any adding difficulty for them to access their property to service that equipment, to get into that enclave that's cut out there. We don't foresee any of that, do we?
Our site is, our proposed work is contained within our property.
Gotcha.
We do
Okay.
not extend over.
And so I just kind of can extend that concern beyond that enclave, just south of that, or coming down, I should say, there's a propane tank. And so again, we're not looking for any conflict with an existing propane tank. Yeah, pointing that out there.
That's on their property, and we actually located that from field survey.
Okay, okay. So again, your concept plan doesn't conflict, provide inability for whoever needs access to that. None of that is there.
Correct.
My last question is, and it kind of goes back to maybe a chicken and egg kind of preface here, and that is we're intending to do a roundabout there. You're intending to build. And so in the context of both of those activities, and there being some payback, I know to be finalized later from our initial discussions, right? I guess the town engineer is who I would tip to first, Bernie, on this. Do you see this plan and its setback from the proposed curb of the future roundabout, that closeness of where their concept begins to the proposed roundabout seems awfully short or seems small? Or am I looking at this wrong? It seems close to the roundabout, I guess is my point. Or is it?
To the roundabout itself or to the improvements in front of their property?
To the curb of the roundabout, to where the traffic is going to be coming around in the new roundabout. Is that an issue? There's a lot of lines there, but one of them says proposed roundabout curb.
Yeah, but the roundabout is completely to the left of this drawing of what you see here.
Okay.
What we have is extended for each leg, each road coming off the roundabout, extended curbs that are improved to reshape. If you'll see, the road actually starts to drop. It will actually move the curb on the east side behind the sidewalk that exists there now. So,
okay, let me.
So the whole road is kind of shifting downward on this screen.
So there's
or
not
to
a
the
concern
east.
there.
If you go to sheet 3,
I don't see it being a
sits off,
concern.
it sits below the bottom left corner would be the roundabout.
Yeah.
We haven't even gotten to the roundabout for the proposed curb.
Okay. So between the proposed roundabout and your development, there will be room for us to continue to have a sidewalk there.
Yes, and we are building the sidewalk as part of this. I would anticipate along our property, I would anticipate that the roundabout most likely will start before we're able to get through final site plan, PWA, final site plan check, signature process through the county.
Okay.
Maybe late next spring.
And sticking with sidewalks very quickly, for the walkability of this and fitting into the overall kind of roundabout area, that sidewalk is intended to tie into the corner where Papa John's is and the building and the functions in that existing building and complex? I don't know what we call that shopping center.
Yeah, the plan that John has now, if you go back to the other side.
Sorry.
You can kind of see the sidewalk as the road's like starting to come down off to the left.
Right.
You'll see that it has the sidewalk up above, and everything that's coordinated, was coordinated between the roundabout project and this, and vice versa.
Right, but specifically tying into, so there's an
Papa
entrance
John's.
road into the Papa John's parking lot, right? So there,
There-
Yes.
This is their sidewalk right here, so we're tying in there.
Yeah,
so you're going to the end.
correct.
The existing sidewalk is
Okay.
here by Papa
All
John's.
ties together, yes.
And around here, and then the
Good.
front of the Comcast is right here, and they're tying into that.
So I'll be able to walk from the stoplight of South Main and Ridgeville on that side,
All the way to the round.
all the way up, past Papa John's, into the roundabout with this plan.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, that's all I was trying to
With this
hammer
plan, you could go up to the edge of their parcel. So depending on when the roundabout's done, et cetera, so.
Gotcha. And lastly, the material that Commissioner Wallace brought up, it's called white EIFS. Mr. Thompson or Doctor, could you tell me what EIFS means? Enhanced, integrated, something structure, or?
I don't know whether it's some type, I'd have to ask the architect.
Okay, okay.
It's a plaster with a wire mesh at the point.
So as mentioned before, kind of a stucco look, perhaps? Okay, all right. And then just above that, it says gray, I'm believing MTL means metal, gray metal panels typically.
Right, finished, yeah, for
the-
contrast.
For the contrast trim, okay, gotcha, all right. And again, I asked those questions because I think it was brought up before, and that is, we want to kind of be consistent. I don't think a town like Mount Airy doesn't want a dramatic kind of, change. I look at this and I have kind of similar concerns, but then I also kind of try to step back and imagine what that existing building with Papa John and that complex is. It's a kind of a cream tone, it's kind of a light colored tone. I'm trying to remember whether it's a flat roof or not. Yours is a flat roof, right?
Right, we would have our mechanical equipment would be on the roof.
On the roof,
That's why
right.
we have a parapet wall to hide that equipment up there.
Yeah, so,
And I think the complex that you're speaking of to the north of this property is, it has multiple level roofs, and they are flat with parapet
they
walls.
also flat, okay.
With a metal coping at the top and a stucco style finish.
Sounds fair, okay. So again, if there's not any further questions, and I'm kind of turning to Tom and John for advice here, because we do have to conduct an open space waiver action. Is that fair? Right. We do have to do that. So we would have to do that prior to any motion with regard to the concept plan.
Yeah, I believe that's how you.
Right.
You want to let Mr. Thompson speak to his two letters that he submitted as part of his application?
Sure,
Go
if
through
there's
the
no other question,
financial-
yeah. So what I'm trying to move toward now is making sure we do the proper deliberation on the OS waiver using the worksheet. And then if that is a favorable or a granted waiver, then I think we can move to now a motion with regard to the larger issue, which is the petition for the concept plan approval. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. So leading up then to using the worksheet, if Mr. Thompson wants to, just a moment, public comment in a minute. If Mr. Thompson wants to walk us through, if you feel like you need to, Mr. Thompson, on the open space waiver.
This one, I can be somewhat brief on the open space waiver, and I do follow in my letter. I label them A, B, C, D versus 1, 2, 3, 4 there, and 5. But they are in the waiver that the first one, to the extent open space exceeds, commercial development, we don't generate any population on the site, and therefore we would be exempt from providing And the answer is the same as as a sole commercial site for each one of these categories. On your worksheet in my letter, number 2, which is B, again, is commercial development generating no population and be exempt from providing any open space. Number 3, or C in mine, and I, of course, wrote it out, what was in the code. I didn't use the bullets. But nevertheless, it is the same. It's a commercial development with no population and therefore would be exempt from providing open space. Number 4D, any factors deemed relevant in consideration of a waiver. Again, we're saying it's a site, it's a commercial development generating no population and therefore would be exempt. And there are no other factors to consider. Therefore, we request the Planning Commission waive strict application of the park and open space adequacy standard. And in fact, you can, if you agree with my letter, you can attach that letter to your worksheet by saying, see A, see item B, see item C, see item D.
So thank you for providing us that information. Again, I would propose among us that even with the applicant's information regarding the OS waiver worksheet questions, we go through and we look at the data that the town staff has provided us that we've asked on the front page, right, for this application. John, you've already gone over all those elements I'm referring to this
Correct.
sheet. And so if I can just for the record quickly use the worksheet, so given the information, given the town staff information, what are the discussions from the commission with regard to the question, the extent to which the open space in the proposed development exceeds the minimum requirements for the development as set forth in 9823 of the town code? So the minimum requirements of this particular parcel are what? I'm going to let you answer.
0,
Zero, okay.
or not applicable.
Right, so we're answering that question, that is, it's not applicable. The other answer is there is none beyond what's required. What's required is 0. So in this application, you could have a circumstance, I guess, where they had a requirement of no acreage, but they gave us some, right? But in this context, on this particular plan, there is no requirement and there is no generous offering of open space as a part of it beyond 0, above 0. Is that a fair answer to this? Okay. All right. The second question, the magnitude of the town's parks and open space deficit at the time that the waiver is under consideration, which is right now, and whether the proposed development will increase or decrease that deficit. Okay. Any discussions with regard to the answers to that question? So is there a concern that this concept plan is going to increase or decrease the deficit?
Not applicable.
Not applicable, okay. Any other answer appropriate there? And I'm kind of asking John, you write in as we go along here if, and again, push back, commissioners, if we go through these and you have a different point of view on an answer or consideration. 3 or 25-5G3, question C, whether the proposed development optimizes the proposed open space in consideration of the amount, nature, i.e. whether the open space is green space, offers passive, active recreation. Again, fact of, there is no offered open space. There is no required open space for this zoning district. Would the appropriate answer by the commissioners, again, for John to record, be not applicable?
NA.
Okay, all right. John, bear with me. I'm trying to follow the code.
No, you're fine.
All right, so number 4, we're getting there. Any other factors that the Planning Commission deems relevant in consideration of an open space waiver specific to a proposed development, or in this circumstance, this proposed, any other factors that the commissioners wish to offer on this?
Ditto.
Okay, none, all right? No other factors. And then lastly, the planning commission may impose any conditions on granting this open space waiver. Is there any consideration from a commissioner as to any other conditions relative to open space specifically for this? There is none offered, there is none required. I'm not sure what any other imposed conditions could include. Appropriate answer is not applicable?
Yes,
Okay.
not applicable.
Okay. Have we completed the worksheet satisfactorily? So you now have a worksheet that you can document and memorialize according to 25-5G, if you don't mind. So we've gone through that. So in the APFO process for concept plans, in the parks and open space of the 7 areas, we have granted an open space waiver. I don't think, Tom, we need to make a motion and vote on that. We've completed the worksheet, or would you prefer a motion?
I would prefer a motion.
Okay, so do I hear a motion now consistent with the worksheet? Yes, John?
Should we also mention attaching Mr. Thompson's documentation to this as well?
I have no objection to that.
Okay.
Right. It appears, yes. So unless the commissioner objects to that, we will include and attach that to the memorialization by the town staff. So again, with Tom's recommendation, is there a motion with regard to granting this application an open space waiver? Complete sentence, a motion to approve?
Yes, I propose a motion to approve.
Okay. I believe the motion is to approve the open space waiver for this concept plan application. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Commissioner Hadley seconds it. Is there any further discussion?
I'd like to edit the motion just to include Mr. Thompson's comments as memorializing this worksheet and attaching the comments that Mr. Thompson's prepared.
Okay.
To the worksheet, to memorialize it.
Commissioner Beta has recommended an edit. Is there any pushback on that? If not, would the original motion be edited to include in the documentation the information submitted by the applicant? Is that
I agree.
Is that consistent with, got it? Okay. So with that edited motion, we need another second.
I'll second.
Commissioner Hadley seconds the edited motion. Any discussion? No further edits or discussion. It goes to a vote on that motion. All those in favor of approving the open space waiver with the documentation, including the applicant's information, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Hearing none, it's unanimous. The open space waiver for the concept plan is approved. We can now move to the second action, which is to rule on the concept plan. And so before I hear a motion with regard to that, I would open now to public comment regarding the concept plan. And I think I saw 2 hands. I saw 3 hands. So I'll go to Mr. Munder first, if you would identify yourself, sir. This is on the concept plan? Yeah. Gotcha.
Councilman Carl Munder here, just a couple comments on the concept plan here. I agree with all the commissioners' comments regarding the harshness look of the building here, particularly since it abuts or adjoins a residential area. I was envisioning something more like the building you see off of 70 in Eagle Head by the new, going on 70 towards Frederick where the new Goddard School is, McDonald's and stuff. There's a nice new medical building there, I believe Frederick County Health is doing, that has more of a Pacific Northwest feel and exterior with it. I think that would fit better into the scheme of the Mount Airy architectural. If the owner of the building is set on this type of design, I would suggest maybe a knee wall or something to meet with the medical eye doctor across the street, the gas station, or lessen the colors, more of a cream or gray to go along with the buildings, lessen the harshness of it coming up. We need something that, since it's an entryway into town, to be, not saying this isn't inviting, but there's something that looks more with the surrounding buildings more so than an oddity. Not saying the building's an oddity. So that's about the building. The second one might be more on Ron. I know Ron didn't draw up the architectural, but that's one thing. Second thing on the site plan regarding the trash enclosures. One thing said a 2-foot high maximum height. I think it might be a retaining wall or something. It's on the site plan itself. It's just, but anyhow, I'm more concerned with the overall height of the trash enclosures themselves. They should be at least as tall as a potential dumpster in there, because my feeling or concern would be that if the fence is 6 foot, the wall for the trash enclosure is 6 foot, the dumpster is 7, people living behind it can, in their backyard, and see the fence, the top of the trash enclosure and everything else. But the 2 foot is, say it says max 2 foot high wall. I'm not sure if that's the retaining wall on it.
That's a wall at the bottom of it. The detail on sheet 9 shows
Okay.
an 8-foot high
Okay.
brick, not typically what I would do stockade fence.
Okay.
But a higher grade brick
Okay.
dumpster.
Yeah, I just, because what I'm thinking of now for the trash enclosures, it should be hidden totally behind the wall of the enclosure. I know it's kind of hard to pick and choose a dumpster size on a building that may yet to be built, but what comes to mind is the car wash, because we approved the wall for it, and yet all the vacuum equipment, the top is visible above the top of the wall, and it's an unintended consequence of it. And as again, I don't want people to be driving in, seeing the top of the dumpster out of it or something of that nature. So if that could be adjusted, that would be appreciative
It
too.
is adjusted, it's on the plan right here.
No, but I mean, is that 6 foot or 8 foot high? It's kind of,
It's 8 foot.
oh, okay.
8 foot,
Okay,
higher than a dumpster.
okay, cool. I couldn't read on the side of the plan, but okay, cool. Thank you. But mainly the harshness of the building and the building colors should be adjusted. Thank you.
I think I saw a hand from Mr. Fry.
Two things. One, I think I appreciate you guys pushing back on the screening on the backside of the property. I don't think it can be said that there's a 0% chance of like an urgent care or something being in there. So the possibility of an ambulance being in there during the day is a real thing. I guess my other comment, suggestion would be the driveway entrance, because of the proximity to the roundabout. I think it makes sense to make it a right in, right out. Because if you've got folks trying to come from the roundabout, make a left-hand turn, they're stopped almost on the curve to try and come into the property. So I think a right in and right out would provide plenty of egress for the users of the facility.
We could not agree to that, because if people are coming through the roundabout, they have no way of getting, which would be a lot, there would be no way to enter into the site. The roundabout's designed to actually slow traffic as you enter, having designed a couple roundabouts. They're designed to slow the approaching traffic into the roundabout before it gets into it, so they're not speeding through it.
Right.
Like you would see on a large Midwestern roundabout.
I still think you're going to have cars stopped. And the volume of cars coming up from 70 is going to be significant. If the folks down in Ridgeville have to do right in, right out, why are these guys any special that they can't be forced to do right in and right out?
Because they're entitled to a full access to their property.
They still have access.
Okay. Commissioner Demoter, did I see your hand go up? Okay.
So very quickly, I wanted to echo.
I'm sorry, did I say commissioner?
You did.
I apologize.
It's okay.
Council member, I'm
It's a
sorry.
non-elected position, but that's
Sorry,
okay.
we're going to bring you up here and sit with us.
Sometimes
okay?
those are the good ones.
Yeah, my bad.
I want to echo the comments that have been made within the commission and the citizens about enhancing the look of the building. It's interesting, I went to a meeting, and it's always stuck with me since then, a meeting with Carroll County government, and a council member got up and said, you know, there are two things that people think of when they come to the gateway of your town. So when new people drive into your town, through your gateways, two things they're thinking about. Is this the kind of place I'd want to live? And is this the kind of place I'd like to open a business? And so anything we can do to enhance the perception of the town when you come in through South Main Street and that cluster of buildings. Again, it needs to fit in, needs to be in harmony with the other buildings, but anything that we can do to enhance that look, to soften the look of the building, even with landscaping, if, I don't know whether it would be a safety issue, but street trees so that it's a nicer look as the gateway into the town. So that's one comment. Question, page 3. Your APFO item number 5, fire and rescue services. I didn't hear any conversation about that. And it says here that the fire department has provided comments as to the site design and layout of the plan. So the comments that they provided, have they been addressed?
They have been addressed, but of course, they'll review it again in final site plan.
Okay, and then this is kind of a segue into the next part of my question. It says there are additional comments that will need to be addressed as part of the final site development plan. Did they say what those additional comments were?
The process is that it's essentially a start over when we submit the final site plan. Each agency, each department gets the plan, and they then do a review and then do additional comments. I'm not done with the town engineer, although I think I'm done with the town engineer's comments. They get another whack at me completely fresh. Same with the town planner, same with stormwater management, Carroll County landscaping, forest conservation. It is building accessibility. All the departments look at it freshly with the site plan. Were their previous comments answered? Is it consistent? And then they look at, do they add additional comments to be addressed in the final site plan? We don't know what they are until we make a submission.
Okay. So, continuing, page 4, staff recommendation number 3. And the wording of it is, fire and rescue services must grant the final approval of adequacy for this development plan before a final site development plan submission. So do you really mean submission, or do you mean final site development plan approval?
That's probably me, and that's an approval.
Okay.
And it wouldn't come in front of the planning commission for final approval until basically the fire department
Okay.
Would sign off on it.
So I'm hoping that if you approve this concept plan, you're going to make a note that it's approval pending comments regarding fire and rescue services, because that's what you've identified in your staff report.
Where it says pending.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments for this application? Seeing none, I close the public comments portion. Unless the commissioners have any further questions, I wanted to, as I typically do, offer some guidance with regard to any motion that's offered by a commissioner here for us to vote on. And I would ask a question, if I could look for Tom's counsel on this, and that is, any approval of a concept plan does require that we have at least adequacy or approaching adequacy for all 7 areas of the APFO?
Correct.
Correct. So we do have one area that's been mentioned, it's fire EMS that is that is pending. Can we render a decision on a concept plan while one of the 7 areas is not ruled yet on adequacy or approaching adequacy? And do we have to table it until that determination is made by fire and EMS? Or can we approve the concept plan based on the condition that it is later rendered adequate?
Technically, what the ordinance says is you may not approve unless there's adequacy.
Unless there's adequacy.
However, I will say that in the past, I believe there have been approvals on the condition that
that it comes later.
based on the particularly the fire and rescue one, because the fire and rescue, I don't believe we always have the comments in a, I'm not going to say in a timely fashion, but in time for approval of the concept.
And I would add, APFO is based upon whether fire and rescue have sufficient resources to service. It is not based upon a site-dependent element. So just like the police. So I think that this is misleading. They have in the past said that they have sufficient resources to serve projects. So now,
Yeah, I'm not eager to engage with whatever criteria the fire and EMS authorities use to determine adequacy of their APFO. I'm here to say that presently, we don't have a letter documenting their determination of adequacy. Is that correct?
I do have a letter, and there are some outstanding comments,
Oh.
hence that's why it's pending.
That's why it's,
But again, to Tom's point, we can potentially, I don't know if we can approve this based conditionally on having a adequacy at the final plan to allow them to move forward, or if it would have to come back, or an amended adequacy related to fire department. But to Ron's point, you know, the comments are specifically to the site development plan, but the adequacy might be related to the manpower that they have now that they're being staffed by Carroll County. I'm not sure if that's how it becomes adequate, sort of like the police. I'd have to look at the code more in depth to determine that.
no, I'm getting that big picture. I'm just sitting here thinking as to moving forward with any motion, we have an outstanding box to check.
Right.
That box being fire and EMS adequacy for this particular concept plan submission. The letter that you have says there are some concerns, or does it say it's ruled adequate or approaching adequate? And we have, I mean,
I can't
do we?
remember exactly. I know that there's
Okay.
3 or 4 comments that are being addressed.
But technically, we don't have a letter that says we deem our abilities as adequate for this concept plan.
I would have to look at, I'd have to look at the letter to see if,
It says that?
to make sure that it says that. I'm not sure if they're actually, their application for adequacy actually, because the police department's like adequate, inadequate, approaching inadequate. The fire department has more of comments related to that. I don't think anywhere on that form does it say adequate, inadequate. If there's no comments on the form, I take that as being adequate. So I'll have to look at the form.
Okay, and we don't have that available here now.
I mean, it's down in the file.
Okay.
I mean, I can go get Deborah to go get it.
And again, Commissioners, I'm just trying to be righteous about us following the APFO, and as Tom has mentioned, technically, we have to have all those boxes checked before we can move to any motion on a concept plan. So given the circumstances here, I think we have 2 choices. We can table this concept plan, if I'm correct, pending a firm determination of adequacy from fire and EMS to close out all 7, right? Correct? Or the other choice is, and you allude to some precedents in handling it this way, roughly, and that is we can entertain a motion, a conditional motion, that fire and EMS do provide that decision prior to the final site development plan. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
John, oh, sorry, if I could just, I mean, how long would it take you to get the letter? Can you, because, I mean, I'm just wondering if there's anything in it that would prevent this from moving forward, anything outstanding, anything critical?
Well, again, I can send Deborah to get the file and we can look at it.
why don't we do that, so we can make a vote tonight?
Yeah, because
Let's get it.
I can read the comments that they have related to that.
Is that easy to get a hold
Thank you,
of?
Deborah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Deborah.
Yeah, because I don't,
Okay.
I would prefer to
I
we
can't
can take-
recall what the comments were right off the top of my head, and I don't want to speculate on.
If in consideration of this, if we can just take a brief recess, 5 minutes?
I will note that we responded to all the comments. we have not received any new comments
Okay.
from,
Okay. So we're gonna take a recess until roughly 10:20, and when Ms. Clint comes back and makes copies, gets them out here, we'll take a look at that. Is that fair?
You didn't tell her to make copies, but hopefully so.
Okay.
She's
Okay.
just bringing the letter itself.
I think we all want to kind
But we
of
can
look
make
at it in
copies.
front of us,
Sure.
don't we?
Well, you could read it.
Take an extra 2 minutes.
Take a quick minute, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll make
Let's take a quick break and stretch our
Sorry,
legs.
we
We're
just-
going a little long tonight, but we want to be thorough,
Sure.
all right? And so there should be a copy of what was referenced earlier by John in front of each commissioner. And I was also provided by the town attorney the exact criteria for fire and EMS. There's 4 subparagraphs under what has to be used by the authority for fire and EMS adequacy decision to render an adequacy decision. And so those 4 elements, I'm trying to match those 4 elements to what is provided on the traditional worksheet from fire and EMS. And unfortunately, they don't align. And so I'm just following the code here. The code says 4 elements have to be addressed in determining adequacy for fire and EMS adequate public facility. Yeah? I'm sorry. So there is the very first item in the code, it talks to response times. And so just looking at that first element in the code, I am looking for something in this format from the Mount Airy Volunteer Fire Company certification form as to response times. And if another commissioner can see it, then
I don't see anything there.
then I'm open to me being blind, but I don't see it.
I found 3. I found 3.
And so, and also just being open here, you know, as mentioned by the applicant, we did look at fire and EMS using this same form on another development on the north side of town last month, correct?
Yes.
And they
Okay.
didn't have, they were fine, right? They were adequate.
Right,
So-
but as Ralph's alluding to, that they're not in compliance with our code with the requirements of preventing, you know, saying what the response times are to that area. And are they in compliance with the response times? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying is, but it's important to have the adequacy documented, right? Just simply for the record, right? Because this is not a small endeavor, and we're trying our best to make sure the code is followed and that those 7 areas are deemed adequate by the appropriate authority. And in this case, the gentleman that speaks for this adequacy from the Volunteer Fire Company gives us information, and it's not exactly what's required in the code, is my point.
And what I will say is that this is, I think, what their reviewing document is. So when they receive a site plan, this is how they review the site plan.
Right.
But I feel like maybe we should come up with a more comprehensive adequacy checklist for them to give to us, just similar to the police.
There you go.
And so I would recommend that we, you know, look at this site plan, approve it conditionally, and then next month I can get a form to them provide that adequacies.
Understood.
And next month, we potentially wouldn't have to review the whole site plan again. We could just look at that documentation and make sure that that's adequate. And if it's adequate, then responding to the code, then we can allow the concept site plan to move forward.
So how would we make a motion to that, then just say,
Just a motion to conditionally approve the concept plan, conditioned
Pending.
upon receipt next month from the chief of the volunteer fire department, certifying the adequacy.
and any other conditions?
Whatever other, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, any other conditions?
So with that option, do I have any commissioner input as to opposition to that direction or path? I think the key thing here is we will get it aligned with suggested efforts. I'm not one to tell somebody how to do their business, but in this case, we need for the future forms to be consistent with what's required information in the code, simply put.
I agree, and that's on me that I didn't see that those are the requirements and stuff.
No,
This is the form they've used before I even got here, you know.
And you know, we've all had discussions with Doug, with the gentleman that provides us, and so, you know, so trying to be balanced, trying to keep this application still being considered. And I don't think we need to take a vote on it. I think I've heard no opposition to the conditional motion if a conditional motion is provided. Okay? All right. So let's leave it there.
Mr. Chair, may I make a suggestion to make it that you're providing conditional approval of the concept site plan, provided that adequacy of fire and rescue is received prior to final site plan. That allows us to move forward. It doesn't burden you. John has to get the document in. You don't have to take another vote on it. It's just.
So I think so thank you, Mr. Thompson. I think your verbiage aligns with what the town attorney said a moment ago, essentially. So we appreciate that. So that's how I believe we could move forward. And again, I don't want to color the picture or lead anybody to a particular motion, but if such a motion were offered, then that would be the appropriate verbiage, and then the background task to get with Doug for future adequacy decisions. Commissioner Wallace, a question?
So are you saying that if that were the motion, that the Planning Commission would not then, again, have to vote or approve the documentation from the fire department? Is that what you're saying? It would just go to, yes. But I don't think that's meeting the intent of the code, right? If we have to certify adequacy? Yeah.
I think it's best, the motion conditionally approve the site plan, condition on receipt and approval by the Planning Commission of a certification from the chief of the Mount Airy Volunteer Fire Company in accordance with
Okay. Okay.
And the applicant wouldn't have to be present for that approval to happen. That can just be done in an open meeting.
Right.
So Ron doesn't have to come back up. The applicant doesn't have to come back in for that evening.
And again, after such a motion, and if it is approved, if that condition is not satisfied by the authority speaking for the fire EMS, then any motion that approved the concept plan would become null and void.
Correct. I mean, the condition will not have been fulfilled.
The condition hasn't been met.
Right,
So
and then the
is that-
concept plan would have to come back in front of us. But I suspect that they're probably adequate, being that they're being supported by Carroll County now, and they have full-time firefighters. It's not a volunteer type of fire.
I understand.
So, but again, I can't speak for them, so I don't know their response times, et cetera.
All right, and then if I can move to then another item that was mentioned repeatedly by both commissioners and some public comment, and that is if we, again, I'm not leading any particular motion, but if the concept plan were given this conditional approval and any other conditions beyond fire and EMS adequacy decision, would it finalize facade, material, building design, roof design choices presented in this concept plan? Or would there still be discussions available in the final site development plan as to having changes for those? In other words, if a condition added on to any such motion that said, change the facade, soften it, make it more in harmony with the downtown architecture or adjacent buildings, we could certainly offer that condition, I think, is reasonable.
Certainly. The only question to Commissioner Wallace's earlier point is do you want that coming back to you? Or is that something that you want, because generally on the final, unless there's some major change, and who knows whether that's a major change, but generally the final doesn't come back to the Planning Commission. It generally is approved by John.
We have to come back here.
Yeah, for final site development plan, come back.
You have to come back to the planning
Yeah, I thought we see it again.
Are the design guidelines applicable? Because I know we've gotten into that before.
We're actually consistent with the new development guidelines. What you're asking for, we'll have to take a look at. I'm not saying we can't, but
Yeah.
we're okay with the guidelines because of where we are there.
So-
And typically, what occurs is that in a concept site plan, when you're approving it, we're locked down in terms of the layout. And what you've asked for through staff review is basically to take a look at fine tuning the architecture so that when it comes back before you, I guess to say staff has looked at your comments in terms of adjusting it as best you can.
Yeah, and we're speaking in terms of the cosmetics, I guess is one way to, or the appearance, or the facade, or even the roof line, or even those elements of the architecture which would make it softer, the words shared here, softer, more compatible with a kind of hometown characteristic of Mount Airy. You know, we have pointed to other developments on other parts of the town, kind of aligning more in a Victorian, kind of timeless, enduring appearance. Some of the concern shared here is that this may look very clean, this may look very sharp, this may be, but over time, could it look like a concrete box?
Keep in mind, though, that I am constricted by building height in an LC. So in a downtown and other zones, I have a lot more flexibility in building height.
But fair to say, that's always an architect's challenge, right? To bring the best looking building within the constraints of the code. I mean, that's a Captain Obvious statement, but that is part of the challenge. And so I think what we're saying here is perhaps one of the commissioners would entertain in their motion a condition that you relook the facade, the colors, the roof line, the architecture, so that there's a softer, more Mount Airy appropriate entry from that side of town. Again, other people have said this is in fact our front doormat coming off the roundabout. So it's fair that we really take a hard look at what that roundabout. You know, it's the old saying, Mr. Thompson, you know, it's really hard. You don't get a second chance at a first impression. And so this is very much going to be a first impression coming around that roundabout. And so, again, I think it's fair, with the town attorney's approval, that if a condition were offered in a motion, that they relook those elements of the architecture to be more compatible with the town's character and surrounding buildings, then that would be a fair condition.
Sure.
Okay? And then, as the final site development plan came about later before the commission, John and perhaps Barney, I'm not sure, but the town staff would work with whatever now new thinking you have, sirs, on the appearance of that building. Is that a fair statement?
When I feel like, yeah, and I feel like what we should do, because again, Ron is not the architect, he's the land surveyor, so he has no control on the architectural. That's the owner working with their architect.
Okay.
Maybe we need to have the architect and the owner come back and actually present a different design or a different feel. Again, because, you know, the first time I've seen color elevations is when these plans came in. They weren't part of the original plan. So trying to look at something in a black and white and trying to understand what the color combination looks like is hard to see. I feel like we can still, you know, make it a condition that the architectural elevations be reviewed again by the Planning Commission before we move on to the final site development plan, so that we make sure that it's meeting what you guys are looking for.
Okay.
You know, and I would say in a LC zone, a Victorian-style house is not going to look right beside whatever the LCs to the left that are going to get redeveloped at some point. You know, it does seem a bit white and a very boxy kind of cube smart finish.
Right.
I don't really like it as well. I think the paneling is very similar to the Mount Airy Eye, which are very dimensional reliefs, I think. I think the color tone is critical. Again, we do have a Chick-fil-A that looks very similar to this, but not 2 stories. You know, if you think of Chick-fil-A, it's very much like a block building as well.
I'm with you.
But
I think if I may say, the designs were, like when we talked about the lights that the patients need, and especially in the rehab, that's what was in the mind of the architect, to give more lights, more windows. So if we increase the window size, will that soften it? Or?
Yeah, I think it's the color of the exteriors.
Yeah, and change the color, like cream or brown instead of white. Because I also am thinking already, because we had proposed previously, I don't know if you knew, a 3-story building, and then there was an objection to that, and so we changed it to 2 stories. So already a lot of money has gone down. I know it's not your, what's it, in architect, just the concept plan. I still have to obviously make the final architect, but just on the concept plan, it's not the first time that we're changing it, right?
Yeah, I think the initial building was a lot of glass throughout the whole thing, so.
Was that better, or?
I don't think it was better.
Okay.
In comparison to what the comments I remember hearing, I don't think they liked that. I think it was even it was part of the Board of Appeals cases.
Yeah.
But it was very much a lot of glass.
Yeah, more light. So I actually.
Even more light inside the building.
I actually told the architect to reduce the glass, because I think I heard that. So I guess we can absolutely, go with whatever your desires are.
Okay, and so again, there's not a motion available, but if a condition were presented in a motion that be relooked, then I think what John has suggested, then that would be the cue for you to get with the architects, look at other options besides what's presented here, take them to John. I think the commissioners fairly trust John to kind of make the, help steer you towards something that's a little more compatible with Mount Airy than what we're seeing here. Is that fair? And then that would then find its way into a final site plan that then would come before our review. Is that?
Yeah, I was proposing that I actually bring it back to you guys to
Right,
make the
that's right.
final decision before it even goes to a final plan.
We can even-
The elevations themselves, I feel like
We
we
can
can
even-
just make it a
So
blurb one day.
what you're proposing is almost like a pattern book dialogue.
Kind of a little bit.
Yes, and so I know.
Instead of them wasting more time, me making a decision and then having you guys, well, John, that's not what we wanted. I just am fearful of that. I don't want to, I'd rather have you guys be on the same page. And
I
again,
think that's fair.
the design standards Ron speaks of, I don't know if he's talking about the town design standards? Okay, because you didn't say town design standards, so.
Okay, so we've really put a wire brush to this, to the APFO, which is all good. I'm not saying it's bad. There's a question, Commissioner O'Malley, did you? No? Okay. I don't think there's anything else here in play. So at this point, is there a motion from a commissioner that takes into consideration these recent comments?
I'll make a motion
Commissioner Wallace?
that the Planning Commission grant concept plan approval of the site plan for Southside Plaza located at 1508 and 1510 South Main Street under the following conditions. All town and county agency comments shall be addressed before a final site development plan submission. The town engineer must grant the final approval of water and sewer allocation for this development plan before submitting the final site development plan. The receipt of adequate facilities documentation from the Chief Mount Airy Volunteer Fire Company by the Planning Commission, and that Planning Commission subsequently approves adequacy of fire and rescue services. And finally, the condition that the Planning Commission relooks at the architecture, that the applicant relooks at the architecture and facade design to be compatible with surrounding buildings and town character, and that the Planning Commission review any changes to the architecture facade design before final approval.
I'll second that.
So before asking for a second, I apologize. Mr. McCarron, is everything adequate with regard to that motion?
Yeah, I mean, that sounded what the direction you were headed.
Fantastic. So seconded by Commissioner Beta. Any further discussions on the motion and the conditions therein? Not hearing any further discussions? Oh, Commissioner O'Malley?
If you'd be open to adding as a condition, the change in the fence height and the alteration of the rear trees or landscaping
Good
to
call.
something taller.
I would recommend that we keep the fence height at 6 feet as long as the plantings are what we discussed. Is that acceptable?
So the condition is,
Condition is,
the edit is to add,
yeah, I'm not going to read all that.
I know that.
The edit is to change the
just a
plantings
moment.
along the
I'm not
fence
sure
line.
you need to add that as a condition.
Moment,
I got
Mr.
that-
Thompson.
I
If
got
could
that
ask you
loud
to-
and clear.
Just a moment, Mr. Thompson. We're deliberating on a motion. Thank you. So the edit, I believe, is to add increased landscaping to the rear.
Increased height of landscaping along the rear of the property.
Gotcha, okay. And so that's another condition on your motion, right? Any other deliberation on the motion? We have a motion, we have an edit to it. She's agreed. Do I have a second on the added?
I'll second.
Commissioner Beta again, seconded on the edited motion. Deborah, have you got all that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not going to repeat the motion. It does have conditions to it. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. None opposed, unanimous. Motion approved with the conditions. Thank you, sir, and Mr. Thompson. I see now we are at 10:45. Our intent was to go to 10:30. Is that correct, John?
Yes, but.
Okay, so what I would like to do is propose to the commissioners that we are going to table until another time, item 10, which is the discussion of the state of Maryland master plan feedback. And so there's a lot of things that are around the master plan. Do we need to set a date or give you a time frame to set a date for the public hearing?
I would not do that yet. I'm thinking we could do that at the next meeting possibly.
That would be August, and my worry is we don't have enough time then to advertise it if it's a September date.
Then
Because
I'm
that
okay
would
with
be,
setting a date.
because that would be August 26th, our next meeting. And so what I'm getting at, folks, is we're required to have a public hearing regarding the final draft after the revisions from the state and the counties for the public to look at, for the public to tell us what they believe still needs to be revised. And so we have to advertise that at least how many days in advance of the hearing?
I think it's 30 days.
30 days, right? And then I believe the draft that we would ask them to consider in that public hearing would be at least 15 days prior to that date. Is that kind of our guidelines?
I would agree, yeah. So
Yeah.
to have
A couple of weeks, right? And so, commissioners, I'm thinking that we probably ought to kind of give John, let John decide the venue. We can discuss the venue, but I think at least a time frame for John to look at available dates for him to put on the calendar, make the advertisement, and then we all aim toward getting the final draft ready for that. And so I'm proposing that we kind of guide John into looking at the first week of September. September 2nd is Labor Day. September 3rd, obviously, is then Tuesday. And so perhaps that week, that may not be a good week in your estimation because of other reasons, but would we want to go to the second week of September? Or what do you think, John?
Town council is on the 9th of September because of Labor Day.
Right.
I don't know about any other commissions in that week. We would probably be okay, possibly on the Thursday or Wednesday of that week, of the second week,
Of the second week?
I'm thinking
Okay.
possibly.
So that would be like September 11th would be Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to search for giving John guidance, because we got to set the date on the calendar, and then he has to, of course, decide a venue. So is everybody agreeable to kind of, I won't take a vote on this, but is everybody agreeable? We just tell John if he can get a date fixed somewhere in that second week, from the 9th through the 13th, whatever that is. Is that Friday the 13th?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, September 11th.
We don't want that date, no. Yeah, we don't want to go there. 9th through the 12th, I think, is what we're saying.
Perfect.
Yeah, and anyway, public hearings on Friday nights or whatever is never good. So as far as venue, I'm going to go to that point here. Based upon the participation that I've seen in the work sessions that we've had on the master plan and in the discussions we've had in actual planning commission meetings, I'm inclined, commissioners, to recommend that we just have it here. Is this venue adequate to hold a public hearing regarding that final draft that we're going to throw out to them? Or do you have a preference for a larger venue? American Legion, maybe Fairgrounds, but again, I'm just opening it to, what do you all think about having the venue here? I'm trying to give guidance to, the director of planning. What do you think?
Based on audience participation throughout this whole thing, I think here would be fine.
Okay, I'm of that same thinking. Anyone? I agree. Okay, so John, I think you've got kind of a little bit of stick and rudder on this, so how to fly this on down.
Yep.
And I won't repeat it, so we're good on that. As far as us now going into what I'm going to table as the state feedback, what do you guys want to do on that? We could hold another work session dedicated to just this at the Senior Citizen Center or here. What are your feelings on going over that collectively?
I'm thinking a Zoom meeting. We did a Zoom meeting the other night, and it
Okay.
went pretty smoothly, so I'm thinking it might be more
Is that
convenient for
agreeable that we
everybody.
go through this and we just have the slideshow as a part of that?
Yep, and then there's additional slides you gave me today as part of that, which I printed out for everybody as well.
Okay, so we'll let you just work on a good date and run that through us. Now, that will have to be a publicly accessible Zoom.
Yeah, we'll post it and
Right.
put it on the Facebook page and,
Correct.
make
Gotcha.
that link available to whomever.
Okay, and if I can just implore you sooner rather than later.
Yep.
Because once we get the state conclusions on what we need to revise, then we've got to put pen to paper and rush toward that final draft. And again, we're trying to do that. I did issue everybody a new workflow chart. The dates on that workflow chart show that we have a tentative work session on the final draft on August 22nd. And that's a live in-person town hall. Let's go over it one more time, showing all the edits from all sources. And then I have a second one tentatively planned at the August 26th Planning Commission meeting as if we don't go through it all on the 22nd, we got a second date to clean up the rest of the chapters that we don't get to. If that's a fair approach, then let's close the state comments. We'll roll Frederick County, Carroll County, and the state. John and I will take the pen up, start making the revisions, and then work toward a draft that we can get in front of you for an August 22nd discussion. Does that sound fair?
Yep.
Okay. And believe me, it's going to get here faster than, we realize. And then the other change I mentioned in the workflow that I issued tonight is I've documented all the Zoom meetings that the different teams have had. I feel it important that when we finally throw this over to the council's deliberation, they see what kind of investment we've put into it, including the time that we have to set aside to go through Zooms and go through these team efforts. So I'm just trying to document the labor and the investment again, so that they see that we have tried to do our best to make it the best we can.
We'll say Streets and Roads, it looks like they have the town council room on the 22nd of August from
Okay.
7 to 9:30.
So maybe Senior Citizen Center,
Okay.
if that's fair, John, because that place works for us. We've used it.
I'll reach out to them tomorrow.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
It was for a work session for the new draft edit, so everything that the county, all the Frederick County, Carroll County, state of Maryland, maps, everything.
So if I've really shaken that, yeah.
How long would it take
So thank you, Bill. I'm trying to zip us right into the very bottom here, which is item 11. If Councilman Evans, you've been very patient. Do you want to go do a quick report? And then John, I'll defer to you on yours. Look at it. He had his rucksack packed, man. I leave it to you, Councilman Evans. I respect, kind of a synopsis or summary. It's up to you.
Yeah, we had a pretty short meeting on July 2nd anyhow, so I can go through it real quick. As far as new business, actually, we had a public hearing for Charter Amendment 2024-2 at 7:15. No citizens showed up for that. New business, we had road closure for August 10th for the Mount Airy Mile, approved five votes to 0. Priority letter for Governor Moore was approved with edits, 5 votes to 0. Town and county fiscal year 2024-2025 agreement was approved and signed, 5 votes to 0. As far as reappointments go, Ken Yanachi was appointed to the Sustainability Commission, and Mike Dixon and Kenneth Humble were reappointed to the Sustainability Commission. Charter Amendment Resolution 2024-2 relating to urban renewal was approved with a 5-0 vote. And the next council meeting will be on August 5th, right here at Town Hall. And that concludes my report.
Fantastic. Any questions for Councilmember Evans? Not hearing any. John, do you have anything to report exceptional?
No, sir.
Okay. You notice how I said exceptional? So for the good of the public, the next Planning Commission meeting will be on August 27th at 7:30 at this same location. If there's no further matters from any commissioner, I won't do a roll call here, but not hearing any, this adjourns the meeting. It is 10:55. Thank you very much.